Thank you for joining us on this Monday morning. Yes, we are live out of Johannesburg. This is the Newsroom show. I'm Evan Jansen.
Elvis Preslin with you, live.
That's his name. He remembered it after a heavy weekend. Obviously today, well, we have to look at a little bit of money matters and how it affects your and my pocket. So the focus is on ratings agency Moody's. Now they've agreed to fork out, to pay a fine, I have to tell you, 11.7 billion rand in penalties for its role in the 2008 financial crisis in the US, Elvis.
Now, he's been fined for using those false credit ratings that eventually led them to the resulting market crash, Evan. And as you know, that had an effect on all of us, everyone around the globe.
All of us, and that's why we ask you this question. It's a question around trust and political interference. Have ratings agencies become a political tool? If we look at what's happened the last couple of years, is that the BRICS economies specifically have been targeted for downgrades by these ratings agencies.
Especially. And at the time when the US was in trouble, they turned a blind eye, it seems like it. So, 84 votes in thus far, 81 of you are saying, yes, they are being used as a political tool. There's those 19% that I'm a bit worried about, but they are saying no. So we'll take a look at why you're saying that. You can also tweet us on that question.
Of course, the BRICS nations are mooting and ideas of starting their own ratings agency. But you guys are tweeting us on the question already. Let's just have a look what's come in thus far. Jubilee, Elvis, is talking about these same agencies that are being fined in the US for manipulating information. And that is at the heart of it all, manipulating information.
He continues, he says, they have, and our government has allowed them. Sometimes tough decisions are needed to unshackle yourself. Well, that is a hint to our own ratings agencies for the BRICS countries. Absolutely.
Well, we're also dealing, of course, with other issues and other news matters today. We'll talk to some stakeholders about that question. But that's our question of the day. Of course, the Fees Commission commences or recommences today. And, well, they look into the feasibility and meaning as well as context of fee-free education for all here in South Africa, Elvis.
So we're asking that question to you today because they are starting today and we're going to find out what's the outcome a little bit later during the course of the year. Can the fees inquiry really avert a tertiary shutdown? That's what we want to know from you. Do you think that that is possible?
Are we going to see more protests? Well, as registration at universities and TV talk colleges get underway, well, from today at some into the next couple of weeks, well, into February, there is this question mark hanging over our tertiary.
As we know, there was also rumors in 2016 already, but the student movement are saying it's not just going to stop right there in terms of the protests.
Tough year ahead for our educators and those leading our tertiary institutions. But there's also a whole lot of other news on a Monday morning. Let's get Elvis to update us.
As you heard in our question, the Fees Commission of Inquiry into the feasibility of free higher education resumes today, with the Statistician General, Padi Lahotla, expected to be the first witness. President Jacob Zuma has once again urged ANC members to stop making pronouncements on their preferred candidate and to lead the ANC when he steps down. Gambia's exiled former president, the man that was going to lead the country for 1 billion years, Yahya Jammeh, is reported to have plundered the state coffers during his final weeks in power. Those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. It's been a busy weekend, I would assume, Kendall.
Once again, it's a great Monday morning. Wake up with very interesting results coming off the sports field. And I tell you what, I've been glued to my TV the entire weekend trying to catch up with all of the best moments from around the world of sports. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
We didn't assess quickly enough. We thought we did, but you know, the nature of the wicket brought the Sri Lankan spinners into the game.
Sri Lanka edges South Africa on a slow, turning Wanderers wicket to level the T20 series 1-1.
Uyanga! Oh, he struck the upright! What a save! What a dramatic finish here, Fabrice Ondoa with a couple of magnificent stops.
For the first time in over 20 years, the host nation at AFCON fails to advance to the next round as Gabon crashes out. again. Serena Williams puts in the hard work, dispatching resilient Czech Barbara Strykova in 2 tough sets.
It was a grind. Williams eventually wearing Strykova down in 2 tough sets. 7-5, 6-4 in an hour and 46 minutes on court.
All this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. The Statistician General, Padi Lahotla, is expected to be the first witness when the Fees Commission resumes at the Tshwane Council Chamber in Centurion today. The year-old Commission of Inquiry into the feasibility of free higher education was established by the President, Jacob Zuma, last year. The Commission spokesperson says that the commencement of multifaceted public hearings will focus on the meaning and context of free or fee-free education for all. The Commission, chaired by Judge Sir Jonathan Heher, is expected to wrap its investigation by the end of May this year. President Jacob Zuma has predicted a big win for the African National Congress in the 2019 elections. He was speaking in Burgersfort in Limpopo at the provincial celebrations of the party's 105th celebrations or anniversary rather. The president also urged members to stop making pronouncements on their preferred candidate to lead the ANC when he steps down.
Let me remind you that the time for names has not yet come for December. I know that some people say yes, yes, but as soon as they leave here, they say, "Hi, sifunubani, ribatla mangma, simangma." No, not yet the time. ANC members should conclude in-depth discussions about the principles and quality comrades for leadership before discussing the names of specific leaders. Whatever we do, let us think of broader South African society. We must not spend too much focusing on ourselves.
17 parliamentary committees will be back at work tomorrow following the festive season break. The committee on the SABC board inquiry has been putting in extra hours to compile a report before the end of next month.
Deliberations on the SABC inquiry have been underway in earnest. The ad hoc committee is expected to finalize its official position by the 22nd of February. For now, there is still some fine-tuning to be done to the draft report.
We've got 6, if you want to call it, subheadings left to deal with, and they are, well, we've dealt with the shareholder and the board. It's what we're calling here, and we'll change it, the legal status and governance that really deals with the stuff members were talking about, legislative framework basically.
The Police Portfolio Committee will meet on Wednesday to deal with a Clarkson inquiry report into the fitness to hold office by suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piecha. That report is yet to be tabled before Parliament. Another highly anticipated meeting is that of the Committee on Social Development. On Wednesday, they're expected to grill SASSA on the new social assistance payment tender. SASSA will have to explain its readiness to pay grants to 17 million beneficiaries from the 1st of April. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
Condolences are pouring in for the Registrar of the Council for Medical Schemes, Dr. Humphrey Sukufa. Now, Sukufa passed away yesterday morning due to ill health. Dr. Sukufa was part of a working committee established by the Health Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, to deliberate on the details of the future role of medical schemes under the National Health Insurance. The Department of Health has expressed sadness and says that Sukufa had a wealth of experience and his death is a great loss. Democratic Alliance spokesperson for Health, Wilmot James, says that even though there were differences in opinion, The Democratic Alliance remained confident in Sakufa's commitment to serve the Council for Medical Schemes. Dr. Humphrey Sakufa was 64 years old. Residents of Heidelberg in the Western Cape are accusing the municipal officials of tampering with the housing waiting list. Meanwhile, concerns are mounting about an incomplete 20-year-old housing project in the area.
Half-built houses and empty plots mark the site of the Joe Slovo housing project. 20 years later, many residents, such as Michelle Johannes, are still living in shacks. She says her family was promised a house 10 years ago.
I've been living in a shack for 9 years. 3 families are using one toilet. I have an 8-year-old daughter. She has to use a bucket to relieve herself. It's not right.
Mysteriously, the names of several residents have disappeared off the local housing waiting list.
We've communicated with the Department of Human Settlements, Western Cape. They didn't help us. We've written to the Public Protector and we've been to the Human Rights Commission.
The provincial government says it's investigating the contractor responsible for building the houses. It says the allocation of houses should be transparent.
You apply for a house. To process the application, we must include an ERF number. The bone of contention is when people see the ERF number that was used when he or she applied is given to someone else, and then they claim corruption. And I think we have to explain we can use that ERF number to more than one person.
This process is supposed to be open process. In the absence of a housing committee, the committee is not in a position to know exactly where they are in regard to this processes, because that process needs to be the engagement of the community. Without community engagement, it's difficult. People will always be suspicious.
A team from national government is expected to visit the area soon. Tanya Krause, SABC News, Heidelberg.
In international news, Gambia's exiled former president Yahya Jammeh is reported to have plundered the state coffers during his final weeks in power. Aides to the new president, Adama Barrow, say that over 500 million dalasi, which amounts to over 140 million rand, is missing. Meanwhile, West African troops have entered Gambia's capital Banjul to cheers from the city residents. Now, they will be helping the new president to take office following Jammeh's eventual capitulation after 22 years in power. He flew out of Gambia early yesterday after refusing to step down despite losing last month's election. Israel has approved building permits for hundreds of housing units in 3 East Jerusalem settlements 2 days after President Donald Trump took office in the United States. The housing projects, which are on land that the Palestinians seek as part of a future state, has been taken off the Jerusalem municipality's agenda last month at the last minute. Now, this was done at the request of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in order to avoid further censure from the administration of Barack Obama. But Trump's attitude towards the settlements is expected to be far more supportive than that of his predecessor. In another development that has drawn an outcry from the Palestinians, Trump has pledged to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
By targeting specifically Jerusalem, they are making use of the statements during the Trump elections campaign.
Well, there we have it for the news for now. We'll bring you some more a little bit later. But today we focus on a very important issue. And that's, of course, the rating agency Moody's that has been fined a lot of money, 11.7 billion rand. And that is our discussion today. Now, we invited them to the show, but Evan is going to tell you a little bit more about that. But let's take a look at our poll that we're running today for you to participate in. We're asking you, have the ratings agencies become a political tool? As you can see there, hashtag rating agencies, hashtag BRICS, Moody's, Standard and Poor as well in there, as you know. Are they just standard or are they poor? That's another question. 80% of you are saying yes, they are being used as political tools, and 20% of you are saying no. So far, we have 94 votes in. You can still vote, 22 hours to go. Let us know what's on your mind. Now, as I said, we did invite Moody's to the show, Ibn, but they sent us a reply.
Yeah, they sent us a little note. Very nice of them to, to recognize us in that way. We've invited them. First, they sent us to the head office in London because apparently the local Moody's branch were not allowed to talk. But here's what they sent us, and let's just tell you quickly what they sent us. Unfortunately, we're unable to take part in this interview. I've attached a press release which summarizes Moody's response to the settlement. In particular, I note that the press release includes the following. After careful consideration, Moody's determined that the agreement, which removes significant legacy legal risk and avoids cost and uncertainty associated with continued investigations and litigations, is in the best interest of the company and its shareholders. Moody's stands behind the integrity of its ratings, methodologies and processes, and the settlement contains no finding of any violation of law, nor any admission of liability. Thanks again for your interest. Best regards, Peter Griffiths, Senior Editor, Media Relations. No liability. The methodology works. No liability. Why then, we asked, do you pay a 11.7 billion rand fine if you are not guilty of any wrongdoing? And that's kind of part of the discussion that we're going to have. Be interesting one. But, one of the men in the know, I put him through his paces last week. Let's just look back. The three largest credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's and Fitch Group, have recently come under fire following claims that they gave out false ratings to nations under review, and they're also being used as a political tool. So, last week, I asked the chief economist at Investment Solutions, Lesiba Motata, what he thought about the ratings agencies tarnishing their reputation. But now all the BRICS economies have been targeted by these ratings agencies. You told me, oh no, this is not true. Oh, it is true. They are targeting the BRICS economies, and the way that they're talking is they talk our economies down, and they're being used as a political tool. Your comments?
Well, let's think about what has happened. Moody's is now the second rating agency after Standard & Poor's that was found wanting over the 2008 crisis. It is a well-known fact that not only rating agencies, but a lot of banks, which will include Deutsche, that received a $15 billion fine, notwithstanding the list of others, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. All these banks have been levied with penalties as a result of what happened in 2008. What is coming out now with rating agencies, it was already well known. And there has been reform
so
from
we
rating
know
agencies.
that they're dodgy, but we still trust them implicitly.
We kind of need someone to look at where we are and give a rating for investments. There is talk of a BRICS rating agency.
That was the next one.
There's discussion whether there's merit of it or not, whether it will work at this point or not. The world as we have it now is that rating agencies are found wanting, and we know that fact. And what's going on now is they have to pay, and they're paying. But we need rating agencies. We still need to listen to what they have to say, because there's a huge amount of money invested in bonds, and we need to know what the rating is on such things.
Well, that, according to Lesiba Motata, we need ratings agencies, he says. Well, what's your view? Send us a tweet or just go and vote on our poll now. We've got Mr. Ivan Jim with us to talk about ratings agencies, whether it's become a political tool. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
We're not going to do the interview yet because we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do. But I just want to show the viewers that you are here and you're going to talk to us about this. And maybe we can touch on inequality after the World Economic Forum as well. Anyhow, let me just get a little bit through the housekeeping on the social media front, of course. We'll start with the hashtag Trump inauguration. Now, millions of people are still talking about this. It was a grand ceremony, they say. Around 31 million viewers watched the inauguration live on television. That's according to the ratings in America alone. Now, here's an image of President Trump talking about the sacred oath, as it were. However, there were many anti-Trump protests around the US. Here's a meme that shows a crowd who attended the inauguration live. However, many were said to be protesting around the outskirts. And this is an image from a Texas anti-Trump movement. Then there's also, of course, the hashtag Women's March. Now, it was held all over the world in protest of Donald Trump. This image is captioned, President Trump, you make a big mistake in trying to divide us through race, religion, gender, and nationality. You actually brought us together. Also, Kim Kardashian. Well, she's entered the world of politics, we wouldn't say. She posted this image that says, to all the little girls watching right now, never doubt that you are valuable and powerful and deserving of every chance in the world. But Donald Trump, of course, did respond to the marches. He says peaceful protests, it's a hallmark of democracy. Even if I don't always agree, I recognize the rights for people to express their views, which, of course, is a big turnaround, or U-turn, as it were. This women's march spilled over into other major cities around the world, such as Cape Town, many cities in Canada, and even London, to name just a few. Then, coming back to South Africa, South Africans are both delighted at the Proteas' performance and disappointed because they lost to Sri Lanka by 3 wickets in an all-action match. Of course, the new guy in the picture, Lungi, 4 wickets yesterday. Then, it's a tight race for those in the lead at the AFCON 2017 Championships. Cameroon and Burkina Faso advanced from Group A into the quarterfinals following the host nation Gabon's fall from grace from the tournament yesterday. Now, let's have a look at what you had to say about, well, the Trump factor. Last week we asked you a question. Do you think Trump will make America great again? Here are some of the tweets that you guys were sending us. This one from Umbulelo. He says, we must remember one thing. President-elect is a raw businessman with success in 7 business strategies, yes, and bankruptcy in 10 others. Adam Ray. Like him or not, Trump is now commander-in-chief. The US populace needs to get on board and support him, else they will sink their country, says Adam Ray. Tsepo tweeted us and he said, Newsroom, those who voted for him will regret. Trump will destroy the United States. That one from Tsepo. And Sipo comes in, he says, Newsroom, Trump is a nightmare. He's so bully. This is a World War III. He's so rude, I don't think he's Christian for that matter. Well, there was a picture of him in church yesterday. Of course, a meme came out, and you'll have to go and look for that one on social media. Can't mention it. Anyhow, the picture of the day now. This one comes from Basi and talks about the euphoric African. It's captioned, Cape Town standing in solidarity alongside our American sisters. Now, of course, they're talking about the Women's March against Donald Trump that took place yesterday. The comment of the day links to that. Comes from Cornelia. And she says, thank you to the lovely people marching in the Women's March all over the world. Cape Town, Berlin, Rome, London. Yeah, they're all uniting, it seems, against Donald Trump. Let's take a look now at what's happening in the courts here in South Africa, of course, in the northwest, where stock theft suspect who was arrested by police in Vryburg in the northwest is expected to appear in the local magistrate's court. The 36-year-old suspect was arrested following an auction where he sold 46 suspected stolen cattle for more than 200,000 rand. Then, in Limpopo, a medical doctor arrested for allegedly murdering his girlfriend. He's expected to appear in the Thohoyandou Magistrate's Court. The 25-year-old doctor allegedly stabbed to death his 23-year-old girlfriend at his official residence last year. Then, in Cape Town, a 47-year-old woman who's allegedly the owner of a petrol station in Guguletu is expected to appear in the Philippi Magistrate's Court. This after police found 2,000 Mandrax tablets with a value of 100,000 rand at the premises there. 7 males aged between 23 and 57 were also arrested in the operation. They will also make an appearance at the court there. All of those, will be updated as we go along today. We're going to take a short little break, but when we come back, we'll be talking to Mr. Ivan Jim about inequality in the world and also ratings agencies putting especially BRICS economies now under the pump. Are they becoming a political tool? That's the key question after a short little break.
Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge. Breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Welcome back. Now, ratings agency Moody's Corp has agreed to pay nearly $864 million, that's 11.7 billion South African rands, to settle with the US federal and state authorities over its ratings of risky mortgage securities in the run-up to the 2008 financial crisis. I'm sure you can remember that. I can remember that very vividly. The credit rating reached the deal with the Justice Department, 21 states and the Districts of Columbia, resolving allegations that the firm contributed to the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. The U.S. Attorney General's office added, and I quote, Moody's failed to adhere to its own credit rating standards and fell short on its pledge of transparency in the run-up to the Great Recession. Moody's was happy to collect outrageous fees in order to rate MBS Bank that were clearly inferior as highly as the issuer wanted, close quote. Now, to further discuss the Moody's incorrect credit ratings, the fine payout, the impact on us as a society, as well as in South Africa, in our studios, we are joined by Mr. Evan Jim. He's the NUMSA General Secretary. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome. Good morning. Take us back to 2008. That impact of the world economy just plunging, what did it have on South Africa, especially when it relates to labor here?
Well, I think we have witnessed a hemorrhaging of jobs since in this country, the ANC government adopted GEAR, which is a macroeconomic framework. You would appreciate that before that, we have mobilized the people around reconstruction and development program, and we were promised that the Freedom Charter was to be implemented. President Nelson Mandela, when he introduced the macroeconomic framework, he didn't open any debate. It was as a result of the pressure of the rating agencies, of the pressure of the IMF, the World Bank, that basically said South Africa needed to have a nuanced economic policy, which the rating agencies approve, in particular finance capital. And I think people need to appreciate that rating agencies and financialization by finance capital basically are on one corner. They, beyond the fact that there is a merger between finance capital and industrial capital, they would always decide which country, which path of development in terms of macroeconomic policies that must be championed. In our country, they would have resolved that we need the Washington Consensus, which has basically took a knock in 2008. As we know that since 2008, at the backdrop of their guidance, we basically experience a huge global crisis that runs very deep. And obviously, despite the fact that they would have recommended these policies that have delivered poverty, unemployment, and inequalities, they are not taking any responsibilities except to basically continue to demand more austerity measures, more measures that ensure that the state must tighten the belt, when we need expansionary budget and a state that intervenes in the economy. And obviously, this is not neutral. It's about making sure that imperialism continues to be dominant. I think what we should worry about the most is about the fact that even though these guys have basically delivered crisis for the rest of the world, because Washington Consensus and their ideological stooges have basically plunged us into a crisis. Our own government still run to Davos. Our own government still continue to champion the neoliberal agenda and basically championing, our own national treasury in the recent past It did everything that they tell them to do. As a result, we are facing a belt tightening where basically there will be no spending that will take place. There will be more belt tightening. Workers are likely to lose jobs, when in fact we need a more expansionary kind of measures that must be taken to create jobs.
Are you then suggesting that this is all in the interest of white monopoly capital?
Well, white monopoly capital has been dominant. It has made money. It has made profits. And basically, these guys themselves, the rating agencies, they are businesses on their own. They themselves looking for new sources of revenue. They are diversifying. They want to make money for themselves. They make recommendation. And on the basis of that, if they have got a relationship with you, they will not stop at making sure that they give you what you want and what they want. But at the same time, they must benefit out of that particular business arrangement.
Yeah, but we're also running that poll there, isn't
Yeah,
it?
we're on the poll. I'll get there. But I want to ask you a question. I'm interested because when I look at what the work these ratings agencies do, Mr. Jen, the one thing that they advise their customers are, interesting, if you look at South Africa as an investment destination, labor's too expensive in South Africa and productivity is too low. Those are two of the key blocks that they've always put forward to those using the information. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, these guys are for championing an anti-working class agenda. As I said, they are championing financialization. They are not going to recommend that the state must intervene in the economy, the state must create jobs. But what is funny is that all these governments are not voted into power by rating agencies. They are voted into power by the people, but instead of basically championing an agenda of their own nation state, they listen to rating agencies and champion that agenda.
And it has a massive effect on developing economies, of course. So we're asking a question, and maybe while we put up this question, you can answer it for us. Have they become a political tool in the greater game? As we see, we've just come back from Davos and the like, when dealing with countries like South Africa, and specifically when I'm talking about political tool in the BRICS context.
Well, I think three things. First, as we were ending 2016, the government, unprovoked, rating agencies were here. There was a big announcement that basically there will be a national minimum wage where starvation wages will be paid of 3,500. That was nothing else except to basically saying to investors, we are here, we are a destination for super exploitation, and that's the basis of attracting foreign direct investment. And you could see, I mean, our delegation to Davos recently, they went there to say they will basically be dealing with long strikes. They will be addressing the question of the national minimum wage. At the back of that, they were basically attracting foreign direct investment at the back of their own people.
Now, Mr. Jim, the payment of the fine by Moody's, 11.7 billion rands. That's a lot of money that we could use, obviously. Now, that payment, is that an admission of guilt by Moody's? Because in their statement, and I want to read this to you again, they say they stand behind the integrity of its ratings, their methodologies and processes, and the settlement contains no findings of any violation of law, nor any admission of guilt.
Well, it's almost like the United States that will go, I'm not sure how many bombings we're likely to experience under Trump. But if they decide to go and remove a government and bomb it, people can die, women can die, children can die, but it's defined as collateral damage. These guys will do anything, and they will not say they were wrong because they would have benefited to this process. They will not turn back on their agenda to champion a neoliberal agenda, which is basically responsible for the chaos that the world is confronted with today.
What would have been the sort of adequate sanction that should have been imposed on them?
I just think that it will be, I mean, we're talking about more than 70 rating agencies. We've got 3 that are popular, Standard & Poor's, Fiji, and the 2 that are dominant, they are both from France and US. My honest question is that why should we not liberate ourselves from imperialism? Why there should not be a wake-up call that the people who are voted into power by people in their own different nation state, for instance in South Africa, this should be about fully implementing the Freedom Charter. You should be dumping all their policies that they recommended that have delivered poverty, unemployment, and inequality, where the state must intervene in the economy, create jobs, nationalize our minerals, stop this extraction of minerals that are not beneficiated, use those minerals to build new sectors to create jobs.
So in a sense, then, it would point that there's an agenda from the international ratings agencies towards the developing countries. And therefore, BRICS are suggesting that, that we should have our own ratings agency. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, we still need to debate as to whether there is a revolutionary agenda in BRICS. I just think that all the people who are coordinating it, they continue to pursue the same right-wing agenda that has failed the people of the South. And therefore, I honestly think that what we need to do is to basically go back to basic. For instance, in our country, we need to implement the Freedom Charter. We need to nationalize strategic commanding heights of the economy. We need to beneficiate. We need to ensure that blacks and Africans basically are affirmed in the economy to address issues of ownership and control. I hear President Zuma now is busy talking about ownership and control. But we must ask the question, is it genuine? When is he on his way to disappear in power? That's when he's basically suggesting ownership and control of the economy.
We do live in a global context, though, and we need to be seen to be globally competitive. So BRICS ratings agencies won't make that difference, you think?
I just think that we got all the bad things to say about China. But China is championing its own agenda for its own people. They were the last to join the WTO. We were the first to be darling of Davos, WTO, IMF, and World Bank. But China has taken every step that it has taken, and it's always about championing the interests of Chinese people. And why should we not be doing the same and still participate in those particular platforms on the basis of our own people's agenda and the revolutionary one?
And in closing, a final word, Mr. Jim.
Well, the struggle continues. We will not be liberated by participating in the discussions. Our people must. Now is the time to organize the working class as a class to champion the struggle for fundamental change. And NUMSA is busy working on the Workers' Party, is busy building a new federation, and we're mobilizing the working class. There's no other class that will liberate the working class except the working class itself.
Now, talk to us about that, because that is a very progressive move in terms of a new federation for South Africa. Is that really needed at this point in time? And aren't there enough of them?
Well, we have got COSATU, which has sucked itself into the ANC. As a result, it is stuck between trying to choose between one capitalist and another in the battle between Guptas and white monopoly capital. We are of the view that we have got nothing to choose except to champion class struggle, and we have tried our best within the federation. We were kicked out, and we're left with no option now but to build alternatives.
Eben?
I want to just stop you there because I want us to move on a little bit to talk about World Economic Forum. But let's change the gears by looking at our poll, wrap up the ratings agencies, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about what happened at the World Economic Forum. I specifically want to get your views on inequality. Now, of course, this is the question we've been asking you to interact with us on it. Have ratings agencies become a political tool? Wow, they're paying fines. They're paying fines for that exactly around the world. 80% of you are saying, yes, that is the case. Let's take a look at the tweets. What are you guys saying? We've got some more people tweeting us. Tabazzo says, allow me to correct the true statement. It has not become, it has always been a political tool. My view, he says. A very interesting view. Iko Nanatso, he says, Newsroom, yes, they are being used by conflicted individuals for their purposes and agenda. How do we then deal with this as a developing nation? Anyhow, that is where we are. Question, of course, we're also asking you a question of the day. Of course, today, well, the Fees Commission is back in session. So we're asking you, can the fees inquiry avert a tertiary shutdown? We've seen what happened last year. Well, it's been a bloodbath, as it were, on our campuses around the country. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that you guys are telling us with regards to the Fees Commission that gets underway today. We've got high hopes for the Fees Commission. As long as they exclude students in this inquiry, it can't be averted. They must conduct proper research on these challenges. This one from Ikonanaso. Then Monwabizi Mbonda. Well, he says the following, Newsroom, they must conduct proper research on these challenges. Well, that's what we've been told all along. Research is underway. Mfunduyake Shezi says the Commission must speed up the process so that students know where they stand for free tertiary education. That's on our question of the day. Of course, there's a whole host of things happening around the world. Let's just take a look at the front pages from around the globe. We'll start in the United Kingdom. Now, The Guardian reports that Theresa May is under pressure to come clean in the House of Commons about the failure of a Trident missile test after MPs accused her of covering up the truth before a crucial parliamentary vote on renewing the nuclear deterrent. Then in China, the South China Morning Post says China's relaxation of its one-child policy led to the highest number of births for 17 years in 2016, with a further increase in the number of newborns tipped for this year to come. Finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that the Trump administration has begun deliberations over whether to move its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now, the White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said this yesterday, and he tell you what, it's causing a whole lot of unhappiness. If it happens, it's going to change the dynamic in the Middle East, no doubt about that. On our Facebook page right now, you can have a look at the Democratic Alliance in Gauteng. They expressed concern at a report that as many as 80 psychiatric patients may have died in Gauteng in 2016 after the Gauteng Health Department cancelled its contract with Life Healthcare Esidimeni, which was caring for about 2,000 patients. Then, as Team South Africa rise after 4 days of robust discussions at the World Economic Forum, the team is satisfied that the right messages about the country as an investment destination were put out. Also, Gambians celebrated in the streets yesterday after a West African regional military force entered the capital city of Banjul and took control of the presidential palace, the symbolic seat of ex-ruler Yahya Jammeh's 22-year authoritarian regime. All of those and more on our Facebook page. You can also go to our website, sabcnews.co.za/news, of course. Now, we've got Mr. Ivan Jim here. We're going to talk about what happened at the World Economic Forum after the break. Fortunately, our guest, the expert, well, didn't come. Trust these business analysts, I tell you. They just listen to what the ratings agencies tell them. Anyhow, we take a short break and we'll continue our discussion with Mr. Ivan Jim after a short break. Don't go away.
Now, as you know, we are focusing this morning on the ratings agency Moody's. They've paid 11.7 billion rands. Now, that's a lot of money for any ratings agency. How do they make their money? That's another question that we probably need to pose. But we want to find out more about that from Mr. Evan Jim from NUMSA. He's the NUMSA General Secretary. Before we closed off, we talked about the new federation that you are suggesting and to put on the cards. Let's just continue there. And we also want to talk about Davos in a short while. But first, let's focus on the new federation. When will that be up and running?
Well, our structures on the ground are working flat out to recruit workers into the new unions. That you would know that COSATU have basically imploded. Almost all COSATU unions, very few that have not have alternative unions that were formed. And we know this. It was because of political allegiance to leaders of those unions who basically didn't champion the struggle for workers. And when there was a voice that was dissenting, people were dismissed. As a result, just like NUMSA was dismissed, we ended up having to mobilize and build alternatives. And we are on the ground. At an appropriate time, we'll make necessary announcement, but we're recruiting. We will announce this year. We are very confident that we'll launch the new federation.
Will that not destabilize the labor market front here in South Africa, you think, Mr. Jim?
Well, yes. Analysts would say that this would be about unions competing about strikes in the shop floor to demonstrate the strike, that their strength. But as we know, to service workers and to build the union is not an opportunistic agenda. We must be very genuine. And the forces that are working with NUMSA in building the new union are very genuine to champion workers' interests. We're not just building any form of a union. We're building worker-controlled unions that are run democratically, that must account to workers. And therefore, just like workers, when they go on strike, they lose wages. We would have to be very responsible in how we make sure that we take up those battles for workers. And of course, we must continue to champion unity for workers.
Because those that are moody and very standard and very poor will tell you that we need stability, political stability and labor stability in a country.
Certainty. Certainty is what they tell us. The thing that is certain for the world to see, Mr. Jim, is that the inequality gap gets wider and wider every year, despite what happens in Davos, all the promises that are made there. Is it a fact that the top 100 CEOs around the world, they come there and they just whine and down and kind of appease and it's business as usual after that?
I guess if this was a genuine agenda, not to pull the wool in the eyes of different nation states, we should fire all those who are continuing to assemble at Davos, including our own team. They have been going to Davos. They have been basically promising the world, heaven and everything else. But what have we experienced? 1% of each and every nation state of the population owns the whole world. I think the report by Oxfam basically revealed that capitalism knows no friend, knows no relative. What it knows is maximization of profit. So when they see poverty, unemployment, huge numbers, for capital, basically they see huge numbers to be exploited. They continue to talk as Cyril Ramaphosa would have done. I mean, I think if there's one message that must be given to them, nothing about us without us. For instance, the right to strike in this country is in the Constitution. He would have concealed that he's working 24/7 to make sure that they impose a limitation on the right to strike. He intends to set a terrible precedent of giving workers 3,500, which will not break the backbone of apartheid colonial wage, which is super exploitation of black and African labor. We can come here at SABC to audit how much workers are being paid. And you will find that in this country, workers are still paid very poor wages. And basically, there's no rigid labor market. What we need is a genuine national minimum wage where SABC or any other company, it must open up the books to see what profits are they making and make sure that workers are paid well.
In this decade, and this comes out of Davos, within the next decade, the world will see its first dollar trillionaire, sir. When does capitalism become vulgar?
Well, capitalists, as I said, they like unemployment. This is not a crisis for them because they use the unemployment to continue to champion and to drive wages down because they believe that the working class is powerless. What we need is the working class that is prepared to organize itself as a class for itself. That is why NUMSA has taken a very firm resolve that we need a workers' party that must agitate, that must raise levels of consciousness of the working class to that of the dictatorship of the class that exploit the working class if a revolution is to take place.
How do we, in the world, here in South Africa, because it's a key concern for us, how do we overcome inequality, this gulf of inequality that gets worse and worse every year? What's the solution?
I think we should not be complicated. We should just be simple that we need to fully implement the Freedom Charter. We need to have a government that champions industrialization, that basically in all the capacity we have in manufacturing, we need to increase tariffs. Where we have got capacity to manufacture product, we need to designate those products and stop dumping of production from China to destroy our own economy and basically create jobs. I mean, as we speak, Fawe has been on the street.
Yeah.
Poultry, there is dumping of chicken in this country, which basically is going to destroy all the factories that are employing people in KZN. And it's time for basically championing industrialization and to push that agenda.
Mr. Jim, that's where we got to leave it. And I must tell you, it was a very interesting discussion. Thank you so much for coming through and being our guest for the last half an hour or so.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Mr. Evan Jim. He is the NUMSA General Secretary joining us here in studio. Interesting discussion, but I tell you, it continues right here on the newsroom as Mr. Jim takes a walk out on the other side. Now remember that we're also asking you that question on the poll. You can let us know what do you make of that, and you can participate in that poll. And do you think that the ratings agencies are being used as a political tool? These are the ratings agencies currently, Moody's, as well as Standard & Poor. Under the spotlight, they had to pay billions of rands just to stay out of trouble. Do we need a BRICS ratings agency? That's another question. But for more on the sports news, let's find out from Kendall and Eben, what's happening there?
Yeah, Elvis, of course, it was been a cracking sporting weekend. There's so much to talk about. African Nations Cup, the host nation is out. But South Africa, well, they lost against all odds almost a little bit. The second of a three-match series, that's a T20 matches against Sri Lanka on what they call a dodgy wicket at the bullring, on the high fell. I got Kendall with me. Kendall, what do you, firstly, you have to take the defeats, I suppose, as you take the victories at times, but what did you make of the wicket that they prepared at the Wanderers? It was totally out of character for the Highveld, wasn't it?
Well, it was definitely not a Wanderers pitch that everybody's expecting, a fast bouncer. That's not what they got. They got a very, very slow turning wicket with lots of cracks on it. And as Sri Lanka looked at home, in fact, they made themselves at home and at the Wanderers and did the South Africans in.
No, South Africa played a lot of fresh new faces. It was exciting to see. It was great to watch these new faces in the green and gold.
John Smuts. We had Lungingidi doing extremely well, getting himself.
This guy's going to be a superstar, isn't it?
I agree with you 100%. He's taking his opportunity and is running away with it. I mean, every time he had the ball, he seemed to be taking a wicket, that young man.
I don't want to be superstitious, but he came out in my favourite number 22.
Is that
and I
right?
immediately knew that this guy's got something about him. Then he won us. He pretty much won the first match on his own. He produced an over, took 2 wickets, and turned that game on its head. And he kind of kept us in this game yesterday, didn't he?
Absolutely, he did. I mean, he had the Sri Lankans rattled at some point with his pace and his accuracy. I can tell you this, talking a little bit more about the wicket. We've got a captain, the standing captain, Ferran Behardien, in picture. We had him just now. He came out and said, look, they took a bit longer to adjust to the conditions than they'd really expected. But one seems to think that this wicket was prepared just to make the Sri Lankans feel like, they can win something out in South Africa.
Yeah, I don't know. The cricket South Africa they will tell you that's a little bit of a stretch, but it's unlike any wicket I've ever seen at the Wanderers.
100%.
And I think the thing that stood out for me personally was the fact that the lack of experience in the side showed, and that's why they took so long to adapt and adjust. And they thought that they were playing on a normal Wanderers track, and they kept on playing shots, and they just weren't. The word is sussed enough to kind of work it out early in the piece, as it were.
No, I agree with you 100%. They did take longer to actually get into the game, and when they did, their shot selection wasn't quite right for the conditions. But having said that, I'll tell you what, it sets up the last T20 for a cracker.
Yeah, AB comes back, doesn't he? AB comes back on Wednesday, and AB got a big 100, mind you, in a warm-up game. Got 130 odd of 103 balls. Certainly signals, sends the right messages, does it? But how is he going to integrate back in the side, you think?
I think he's just going to walk straight in. I mean, the guy is an absolute class act, and he's shown that he's ready to be playing T20 cricket once again. So, having said that, I think everybody's looking forward to see what AB de Villiers is going to be doing against Sri Lanka in this match that's coming up. And I tell you what, I can't wait to see the man back in the green and gold and knocking those 4s and 6s out of the park.
Kendall, thank you for coming in today. That's Kendall Mahamati will be back with us in about 10:40 to give us a complete sports update. It's been a cracking sporting weekend where, well, all around the world, AFCON, football, cricket, all of it, of course, Australian Open tennis as well. Now, we're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back with you at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock with another update. Don't miss it.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Lochani kunjani nilothisa ngimi umama Esther Mahlangu ngila kwaNdebele Velte Frere ngiyathokoza.
With many accolades to her name, iconic Ndebele artist Mama Esther Mahlangu has added yet another creative aesthetic to the Western creations. This time around, she embarked on a collaboration with 9-time Grammy Award winner R&B artist John Legend by fusing music and art to one of the most famous alcoholic brands in the globe.
Esther really is playing the role of the, bringing the authentic African artists, creativity to life. John is obviously the global superstar that resonates in hundreds of markets around the world. And, this bottle will be on sale in over 40 countries. Esther's artwork will appear on the back of our bottle, and it's her Ndebele artwork that I think really brings this beautiful energy and passion and creativity to life. Alongside that, you've got John, who brings his obviously, global superstardom and the ability to really amplify the work that we're doing here. So it's all very exciting for Belvedere.
The 81-year-old Ndebele artist is well known for her bold, large-scale contemporary paintings. She gained her first international attention in 1989 at an exhibition titled Magicians of the World in Europe. Fast forward to 1991, she created the first African art car for BMW following the creations of well-known artists such as American artist Andy Warhol and Frank Stella.
Awa lokhu bangifuna ngabe ngisebuthabelo emuseum bangitshela bona thokoza ngiyogwala iBM emhlophe ngathi hawa yina kinga ngizayigwala angithi imbere kwami ngathi yina kinga imbere kwami ngizayigwala omunye ukhwala athi yawu Esther ikoleje amsile imhlophe ngathi reg angithi ngiyawazi imbere kwami hawa ke ngayigwala vele ke ngekube nekinga ngayigwala bengayicetha njengoba noyibona ilapha njaya.
The artistic collaboration between John Legend and Mama Esther is for a good cause. In 2006, singer Bono and Bobby Shriver founded RED, a non-profit organization which partnered with the world's most iconic companies in the fight against AIDS.
So the money that we raised through RED, so every single one of our stunning Esther designed red bottles, we donate 50% of the profits of our profits from the sale of those to help fight diseases here in Africa, and we donate that money directly to the Global Fund, and then they direct it into specific projects in various countries in Africa, including here in South Africa.
Araghe khulu akunakinga baraghe khulu ngoba abanye asinandro abanye kwenza njani izokusiza ngitsho
It'll be coming out early September. We've got a major global launch event end of August in New York City, August the 27th, with John, with Esther. Esther's coming to New York. She's going to be then doing a little tour around the US, and the bottle will be available for sale here in South Africa from, I'd say, early mid-September onwards.
Yeah, hello again, everybody. It's I'm Evan Janssen. Kendall and myself will be with you for the next hour. Of course, it's just gone 10 o'clock. And, well, today we're talking about ratings agencies, and we've been running a poll for the last, well, a couple of hours around whether they've become a political tool. There have been some interesting tweets on this, and we've had great discussion around ratings agencies and outlook, economic, and so forth. What do you make of what's going on around this discussion, Kendall?
I reckon what we're getting is actually the feel of the nation here, where 81% are saying yes, they feel that ratings agencies have become a political tool. And you can just about look around the world and see what is happening in those countries that have been affected by negative ratings, by the Moody's and so on and so forth. Yeah, we've invited Moody's, of course, to come in and give us their view. They sent us a one-pager saying that, well, they are beyond reproach. Their ethics is still sound and their methodology works. This one, a tweet comes in from Tebatso, and he says, Newsroom, Ivan Jim makes a valid point. Private ownership of important sectors means FDI benefits only a few. Taxes are not enough, says Tebatso. And, well, Mac King Faku says, watching Ivan Jim on SABC Newsroom, and I think is 100% correct. Yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and keep coming, keep sending us your tweets, even on our poll or our question of the day. Of course, we're asking you today a question of the day around the Fees Commission that gets underway. Can the fees inquiry avert a tertiary shutdown? We saw that last year. What are your views? What do you think around this? Of course, our institutions are, well, I think they're waiting with bated breath in a way for the start of the academic year. The promise was made at the beginning last year that there would be protesting again. Let's see what happens. IH Nazo says as long as they exclude students in this inquiry, it cannot be averted. They must conduct proper research on these challenges. Yep. What if the students don't want to be part of it, like they've said? Monwabizi Mbonda, he says, Newsroom, they must conduct proper research on these challenges. Similar view. 100%. You know, there's a lot to be said. Fundoyake says the Commission must speed up the process so that students know where they stand for free tertiary education. Yeah, the Fees Commission gets underway today. That's our discussion. But Kendall's going to go over to the naughty corner, and I will give you our top stories. The Fees Commission of Inquiry into the feasibility of free higher education resumes today with the Statistician General Padile Hotla expected to be the first witness. President Jacob Zuma has once again urged ANC members to stop making pronouncements on their preferred candidates to lead the ANC when he steps down. And the Gambia's exiled former president, Yahya Jammeh, is reported to have plundered the state coffers during his final weeks in power. Those are your top stories on this platform right now. But let's go over to Kendall Mahamate now to give us a sports update. Evan, thank you very much. The naughty corner is where everybody wants to be because it's where all the fun is. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Quickly enough. We thought we did, but you know, the nature of the wicket brought the Sri Lankan spinners into the game.
Sri Lanka edges South Africa on a slow, turning Wanderers wicket to level the T20 series 1-1.
Oh, he struck the upright. Dramatic finish here. Fabrice Ondoa with a couple of magnificent stops.
For the first time in over 20 years, the host nation at AFCON fails to advance to the next round as Gabon crashes out. Once again, Serena Williams puts in the hard work, dispatching a resilient Czech, Barbara Strikova, in 1 hour, 45 minutes.
It was a grind. Williams eventually wearing Strikova down in 2 tough sets. 7-5, 6-4 in 1 hour and 46 minutes on court.
All this and more we've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin, about 10:40 or so. For now, it is back to Yeben, who's got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Kendall will be back with us at about 10:40 or so to give us a complete sports update on this very busy Monday morning. Now, our top story at this hour, Statistician General Padi Lehotla is expected to be the first witness, when the Fees Commission resumes at the Tshwane Council Chamber in Centurion today. The year-old Commission of Inquiry into the feasibility of the free higher education was established by President Jacob Zuma late last year. Commission spokesperson says the commencement of multifaceted public hearings will focus on the meaning and context of fee-free education for all. The commission, chaired by Judge Jonathan Hare, is expected to wrap up its investigations by the end of May this year. President Jacob Zuma has predicted a big win for the ANC in the 2019 elections. He was speaking in Burgersfort, Limpopo at the provincial celebrations of the party's 105th year anniversary. The president also urged members to stop making pronouncements on their preferred candidate to lead the ANC when he steps down.
Let me remind you that the time for names has not yet come for December. I know that some people say yes, yes, but as soon as they leave here, they say, "Hi, sifunubani, ribatla mangma, simangma." No, not yet the time. ANC members should conclude in-depth discussions about the principles and quality comrades for leadership before discussing the names of specific leaders. Whatever we do, let us think of broader South African society. We must not spend too much focusing on ourselves.
Around 17 parliamentary committees will be back at work tomorrow following the festive season break. The committee on the SABC board inquiry has been putting in the extra hours to compile a report before the end of next month.
Deliberations on the SABC inquiry have been underway in earnest. The ad hoc committee is expected to finalize its official position by the 22nd of February. For now, there is still some fine-tuning to be done to the draft report.
We've got 6, if you want to call it, subheadings left to deal with. And they are, well, we've dealt with the shareholder and the board. It's what we're calling here, and we'll change it, the legal status and governance that really deals with the stuff members were talking about, legislative framework, basically.
The Police Portfolio Committee will meet on Wednesday to deal with a Clarkson inquiry report into the fitness to hold office by suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piega. That report is yet to be tabled before Parliament. Another highly anticipated meeting is that of the Committee on Social Development. On Wednesday, they are expected to grill SASSA on the new social assistance payment tender. SASSA will have to explain its readiness to pay grants to 17 million beneficiaries from the 1st of April. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
IFP leader Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi says his passion for serving the people has sustained his long political career. He was speaking during the IFP's victory rally in KwaXabisa in the northern KwaZulu-Natal. After last year's local government elections, the IFP is now in charge of 13 municipalities, up from the 2 in 2011.
IFP supporters braved the heat and packed KwaXabisa sports ground to celebrate the gains the party made during last year's poll. Down to 2 municipalities in 2011. The party regrouped, winning 5 more through by-elections. Now it's running 13 of KwaZulu-Natal's 54 municipalities. Buthelezi attributes his party's fortunes to good governance, service to the people and no corruption.
I'm very proud of the fact that in the midst of so much corruption in South Africa, where people who are given authority as either as mayors or as management of municipalities are actually so corrupt today that most of the money is mismanaged and stolen.
Buthelezi, who celebrates his 89th birthday in August, says he has tried to step down in the past.
The thing really that keeps me going, even though for a long time I've been wanting to step down, is the fact that any little thing such as this one that improves the lives of our people, either individually or collectively, is the thing that keeps me going.
Earlier on, Buthelezi donated a fully furnished house to a child-headed family in the area. She says she thanks the party for building her a new house. She also says she can't believe her eyes. She is very grateful. The party plans similar victory rallies in all IFP-run municipalities. Lungisi Khumalo, SABC News, Hlabisa.
Now, condolences continue to pour in for the Registrar of the Council for Medical Schemes, Dr. Humphrey Zakufa. Zakufa passed away yesterday morning due to ill health. Dr. Zakufa was part of a working committee established by Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi to deliberate on the details of the future role of medical schemes under the National Health Insurance. The Department of Health has expressed sadness and says Zakufa had a wealth of experience and his death is a great loss. Democratic Alliance spokesperson for Health, Wilma James, says that even though there were differences of opinion, the DA remained confident in Zakufa's commitment to serve the Council for Medical Schemes. Dr. Humphrey Zakufa was 64 years old. Residents of Heidelberg in the Western Cape are accusing municipal officials of tampering with a housing waiting list. Meanwhile, concerns are mounting about an incomplete 20-year-old housing project in the same area.
Half-built houses and empty plots mark the site of the Joe Slovo housing project. 20 years later, many residents, such as Michelle Johannes, are still living in shacks. She says her family was promised a house 10 years ago.
I've been living in a shack for 9 years. 3 families are using 1 toilet. I have an 8-year-old daughter. She has to use a bucket to relieve herself. It's not right.
Mysteriously, the names of several residents have disappeared off the local housing waiting list.
We've communicated with the Department of Human Settlements, Western Cape. They didn't help us. We've written to the Public Protector and we've been to the Human Rights Commission.
The provincial government says it's investigating the contractor responsible for building the houses. It says the allocation of houses should be transparent.
You apply for a house. To process the application, we must include an ERF number. The bone of contention is when people see the ERF number that was used when he or she applied is given to someone else and then they claim corruption. And I think we have to explain we can use that ERF number to more than one person.
This process is supposed to be open process. In the absence of a housing committee, the committee is not in a position to know exactly where they are in regard to this processes. Because that process needs to be the engagement of the community. Without community engagement, it's difficult. People will always be suspicious.
A team from national government is expected to visit the area soon. Tanya Krause, SABC News, Heidelberg.
A 14-year-old boy from Middelburg in Mpumalanga has been paralyzed after allegedly being assaulted by his school principal. The boy can't walk or do anything for himself. His family is devastated as he is constantly in pain. The Provincial Education Department say that they are aware of this matter.
Pamandla Choma has not been to school this year. The 14-year-old was allegedly assaulted at school by the principal, accusing him and another boy of stealing 150 rand. Siphamandla twisted his spinal cord and lost a feeling to his legs and is now wheelchair-bound.
He tripped me and I fell, and he put his knee on my chest and asked me, "Where is the money?" I told him I didn't know.
The boy has been in and out of hospital since November when the incident happened.
This is very painful for me. My heart is sore because I don't know how to deal with it, and I'm not coping.
A case has been opened with the police and the department has been served with court papers.
The actual basis for the claim is based on a delictual claim, meaning the child ought to have been protected whilst at school, and the conduct of the principal, we believe it's not in line with what the government policy is, more particularly of the fact that there is no corporal punishment.
The Mpumalanga Education Department says it's conducted its own investigation and awaits the outcome of the probe. What makes matters worse is that during the day, Siphamandla is left alone in this house when his mother is at work. He uses nappies as he can't feel when he has to relieve himself. Siphamandla's dream was to study and become a medical doctor. But now, with his condition, he says he doesn't see that dream becoming a reality. His family says they want justice. Sibongile Mkanimbolweni, SABC News, Middelburg in Mpumalanga.
The National Teachers Union is heading to the courts, this to stop the Provincial Department of Education from redeploying the so-called surplus teachers without any agreement with affected parties. The union says the process is unlawful and will contribute negatively to this year's matric results.
The provincial department has started the year on a wrong footing, taking decisions that will impact negatively on examination results. These include uprooting the surplus teachers to other schools without any discussions and agreements with them, and infringement on teachers' rights. This, Natu says, will be disruptive to the academic programs.
We have taken a decision to go to the Durban High Court to interdict the KwaZulu-Natal Education Department from moving the educators without following the correct process as agreed upon with the National Department of Basic Education.
But education authorities dispute the union's claims.
The process of deploying teachers has never been compulsory to anyone. It's defined in terms of the law. That's why we have a bargaining chamber where all unions sit so that they represent the interest of their members.
Of the 2,800 surplus teachers in the province, 480 are yet to be redeployed, but government is in the process of doing so. Sibonga Gonkembata, SABC News, Durban.
Shifting our focus to international news now. Gambia's exiled former president Yahya Jammeh is reported to have plundered the state coffers during his final weeks in power there. Aides to the new president, Adama Barrow, say over 500 million dalasi, which amounts to about 140 million rand, is missing. Meanwhile, West African troops have entered Gambia's capital, Banjul, to cheers from the city's residents. They will be helping the new president to take office following Jammeh's eventual capitulation after 22 years in power. He flew out of Gambia earlier yesterday after refusing to step down despite losing last month's election. Now, in the Middle East, Israel has approved the building permits for hundreds of housing units in 3 East Jerusalem settlements 2 days after President Donald Trump took office in the United States. The housing projects, which are on land Palestinians seek as part of a future state, have been taken off Jerusalem Municipality's agenda last month at the 11th hour. This was done at the request of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in order to further avoid censure from the administration of Barack Obama. But Trump's attitude towards the settlements is expected to be far more supportive than that of his predecessor. In another development that has drawn an outcry from Palestinians, Trump has pledged to move the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
By targeting specifically Jerusalem.
The 28th AU Summit began yesterday in the capital of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, under the theme, Harnessing the Demographic Divide Through Investment in Youth. There are many key issues that will be discussed this time around. Firstly, with the voting in of a new AU chairperson to replace Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. But following the election disruptions in the Gambia, elections, peace and security and the threat of terrorism are also set to be on the agenda. Now, joining us in studio is our African political analyst, Israel Mkhize. Very good morning to you. Israel, nice to have you back first time this year.
Thank you, man. Good to be back here.
What's your expectation of what will happen at the AU this week?
I was very intrigued by the choice of the theme, harnessing the demographic dividends of the youth. I think it's because Africa is growing young, you know, in terms of population demographic. And most of the aspirations laid out in the Vision 2063 document, as you saw last year when it was pushed and promoted in collaboration with the Editors Forum, that they want to push it to young people. And most debates are said to be, should attract young people, particularly in the urban, as Africa is urbanizing, and also in the rural, but also at tertiary level.
We hear that a lot, you know, investing in youth, investing in young people. We hear that a lot in Africa, but what tangible steps can the AU put in place to make this happen?
Well, the first thing is that they have to intensify the whole education question. Put pressure on the African, say, member states, the permanent member states, and say, look, what is the quality and orientation of your education sector? Number two, what message are you putting across with these pronouncements on new generations? For instance, in Kigali, they pronounced the fourth generation, which is a migration to technology and digital space. So if you then say education first, the industry, then you let the young people lead these migrations. Then the fourth one, to say, how do we migrate young people from becoming a job-seeking class to become an entrepreneurship class? Because as you see, most African economies, well, the GDP may be, the bigger chunk of it may be coming from big conglomerates, but the most employing sector is usually the small and medium enterprises.
Now, peace and security, of course, at all the summit is always very high on the agenda, but we've just seen, of course, the ceding of power, if I can call it that, of Yahya Jammeh in the Gambia, with Adama Barrow now being moved in office on the back, of course, of military intervention, if one can call it that, by ECOWAS. How do you view the role that the AU played within this, overseeing this change?
Well, I've been asking myself the same question, because I saw quite a minimalist role, but more the regional body, the ECOWAS, came forward. And I compared how the whole Nkurunziza versus Jammeh thing played out, where with Nkurunziza we did not hear any internal or regional body threat of a military intervention, but instead it's even the outgoing UN secretary who actually called for the AU to put forward an army. But in this case, in ECOWAS, the regional body said, no, we are making a regional decision to say that we're going to put on the army. But on the question of security, it's quite, it remains to be seen, because most heads of state in Africa, I can give you 13 who did not necessarily have a good exit strategy from power.
Do they ever have an exit strategy? It's not about a good exit strategy, it's about staying in power, isn't it? And this case in point with Yahya Jammeh was a kind of acid test for the AU a little bit, and it should sort of set a precedent for other heads of state on the continent going forward. Did it do that?
Well, I think it should set a sort of a precedent, but just backdoor, you have the president in Zimbabwe who's going to stand for the, I don't know how many term, maybe 7th term. Then you have in Tunisia, when Ali Ben Ali was having to be pushed out of power. In Libya with Gaddafi, and then you go to Egypt where Morsi Mubarak was pushed out. You go to Madagascar where in 2009 one guy mobilized the army to go and take over. You go to Mali, you go to Ivory Coast, the whole Gbagbo case. I mean, you go to Cote d'Ivoire. I mean, you go to CAR there with Bozes. So it's sort of an unfortunate trend that we see that the democratic process is really not thought through to the end.
Let's talk quickly about a new chairperson at the African Union. Before we talk about a new chairperson, what do we make of the time that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma spent in office there?
Right. Well, I think she did a brilliant job under very difficult circumstances. I mean, even if you listen to her report when she was reporting in Durban, I followed the whole presentation. The difference that people need to distinguish is that even though the body is there, the African Union body is there, like the European Union, there's still the sovereignty of the states and the sovereignty politics. So you find that, I mean, there's mixed feelings on the other hand, that, you know, there were issues like Nkurunziza and so on, and we didn't see the African Union coming in with a strong hand. But Africa is quite a dynamic environment at an abstract level when you look at an overseeing body like an AU vis-a-vis the sovereign politics of each and every country. So I would say that sometimes a leadership turn, you really cannot estimate its impact during its term. But you can tell maybe when you look in hindsight and then say in those areas what really progress was made.
Who's next? And you know the politics around who's next is always very hectic. What can we expect?
Well, we've got about 4 candidates that are running. You remember that last year, 8 July, that it had to be postponed because only 23 votes came in and about 28 countries abstained. And Burundi did not take part because they were actually absent from the conference. But now you've got from Botswana, from Kenya, from Chad, candidates that are actually on the run. So I cannot actually predict from onset and say so looks like a running horse that's ahead.
Now, of course, terrorism will be part of the agenda here, and there's still talk of Boko Haram in Nigeria, the Lake Chad region. He's never settled, is it? Do you expect the AU to take a harder stance, a tougher line with regards to terrorism on the continent going forward?
You see, when it comes to terrorism, I want to say that sometimes it's got a spillover effect from what's happening in the higher geopolitical setting. For instance, I've noticed that there is this readership of how, for instance, if Russia is behaving in a certain way towards the issues up there in Syria, and the current American new nationalism that has come out, and this declaration of us first and you on the other side. So that usually tends to have a spillover. And then you see a reaction from a systematic, coordinated, sometimes it may have different names. But you find that it's actually one systematic, coordinated militia groups, you know, coming underground. And the strategy is to use intimidation more than the extent of harm. So if you attack a university with 100 students or 20 students, that's a sensitive space, and then that actually sends a particular message even in the region.
Let's quickly talk about Donald Trump and the African Union and Africa in particular. How do you view this America First? Do you think he's going to repeal some of the deals that we've got on the table, or do you expect us to have business as usual? And how do you think the AU should respond to Donald Trump?
Well, I think Trump is raising a new unipolar sort of context, which we are past that. We are in a multipolar world where you have to be sensitive and cautious of what's happening in other regions. You have seen other big leaders, even in Britain and China, sending, firing shots to him, saying that the system is based on on dependency, you know, on what happens. So when it comes to Africa, his America First approach may actually be very detrimental, particularly on the intelligence gathering, as well as on the cooperation collaboration with other sensitive intelligence communities. And I learned as I was coming here that George Bush whispered to him on his way to House House that don't piece the intelligence. So I don't think you'll want...
Which is done already.
Which is done already.
Which is done already. But
you know, for him to manage the issues, for instance, the Boko Haram issues in Nigeria, he'll have to have a good relationship with those regions. You know?
Absolutely.
So if you piece them...
Nothing happens in isolation anymore. Israel, thanks for coming in today. Israel Mkhize is a political economic analyst, really joins us periodically to give us his views. Of course, the AU summit is underway in Addis Ababa right now. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of there this week. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, there'll be more right here on Newsroom.
Keeping you up to date with business developments.
There's no shortage of money in the system. There's a shortage of implementation capacity to actually get things done.
Always on point with news of the day.
May has promised radical social and economic reforms, fueling speculation over the future of current senior figures.
On the ball every time with all sports codes.
The Joburg side already have a quarter-final at home, and a victory against the Argentines will ensure home semi-final.
Accurate weather updates after every bulletin. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Hello again, you're still watching Newsroom. It's just gone 10:32 to be exact. That's Central African time, wherever you're watching us on the continent, into the Middle East. Very good morning to all of you. Now, after more than 20 years of sanctions, the United States of America has announced its decision to lift sanctions against Sudan. In a statement, the US says the process to lift sanctions against Khartoum began in June last year. Washington has also explained that the lifting of sanctions was the culmination of months of intensive bilateral engagements with Sudan. Meanwhile, the outgoing African Union Commission chairperson, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, has welcomed the lifting of economic sanctions against Sudan. I spoke to the Sudanese ambassador to South Africa, His Excellency Omar H.E. Siddiq.
2017 will be a busy year for us. Of course, lifting the sanctions is a welcome move by the Obama administration. And we need also to prepare ourselves to enter the international market and be active partner in the international economy again after 20 long years of American sanctions. This is of course, on the economic side. On the political side, of course, we are looking forward very soon to have our permanent constitution being adopted by the Parliament, and the formation of the government of national consensus with the post of Prime Minister. So definitely 2017 will be a very busy year for us.
You mentioned the Obama administration. Of course, the world is holding its breath for the Trump administration that starts tomorrow. Is there any fears on your part that these decisions could be overturned under Donald Trump?
I don't think so, sir. Simply because there is a transitional team that takes over from the old administration to hand over to the new administration. That was an agreement, mutual agreement by the transitional team, and we don't believe that the United States will retract on that decision. It's not foreseen at all.
Yeah, you mentioned it was a long process, 6 months from June 2016 when discussions started. Just take us through the process and what were the commitments that you as Sudan had to sign off on?
Well, engagement with the United States never ceased, actually, during the last 15 years. But during the last 6 months, since June last year, contacts and engagement intensified between the two governments. A number of delegations from Sudan visited the United States, and equally various delegations from the United States visited Sudan. Interdepartmental committees at the level of ministers and at the level of experts were formed to discuss the concerns of each party to the other. Candid and very transparent discussions took place between the two parties, and each one expressed freely its point of view to the other. And ultimately came the executive order from President Obama last Friday, 13th of January.
Now, sanctions are lifted, and they always say, be careful what you ask for, you might just get it. This is a very positive development, of course. But what does the future now look like, you think, for Sudan? And I'm talking politically, socially, economically.
Well, it is actually a very positive move, and I think it is a move in the right direction by the United States administration. This lifting of sanctions will definitely pave the way for us to deal commercially and economically with the United States. It will also pave the way for us to enter the international market again. Of course, economies do not flourish in one day, but I think with this move, it will lead to have a healthy economy in the country. Sanctions were not an easy exercise, it was really bitter on us, and it affected us severely. So I think this is a right move, and it will improve our relations with the United States to be built on solid grounds, on mutual respect and mutual benefit for the two countries.
Just give us a quick little bit of detail. 20 years of sanctions, a very long time, and must have a massive impact. Give us a little bit of detail about the impact that 20 years of trade sanctions had on your country.
Well, 20 years is a long time. It is an age of one generation at least. But the effect of sanctions in Sudan was really bitter. And it may need long time to enumerate the effect and the plight through which my people in Sudan lived because of these sanctions. Well, if we look at the transportation sector, for example, Sudan Airways depended only on Boeing aircrafts, and the majority of them are now grounded. This is in addition to the fact that a number of Sudanese people lost their lives because of air crashes, simply because we couldn't get spare parts for our airplanes for Sudan Airways. Again, Sudan Railways, our locomotives, which were American-made, actually grounded, simply because we couldn't find spare parts for them. Sudan Shipping Line is another catastrophe. That is, it's grounded, or at least went out of service because of the American sanctions. And if we look at the health sector, the equipments and the machine we need in hospitals, we couldn't get from the United States. And even if we want to purchase them, it is difficult to make bank transfers to get those equipments, child incubators, even drugs there for diabetes, for hypertension, and even for cancer. Yeah. We couldn't get them. The banking system actually in Sudan is the worst hit, because each international transaction simply blocked. Sudanese assets in the United States blocked and confiscated, but now will be released. And even education, our students and our lecturers couldn't get scholarships, and they couldn't even get access to international symposia or participate in conferences, or even they cannot even get references from the United States. So all in all, it is a bitter experience, and we are glad that now these sanctions are over.
Your Excellency, you mentioned earlier that things don't change in a day, but in conclusion, what will be your key focus as a nation now going forward?
Well, of course, the focus will be all centered on the economy. 20 years, as I said, under sanctions is a long and a bitter experience. And we have to prepare ourselves and engage internally to prepare ourselves to be active in international economy and try to mitigate the after effects of 20 years of sanctions. The access to the market actually will not be open in one day, and so we need to prepare ourselves internally to prepare our competitiveness for entering into international economy once again.
Keeping you up to date with business developments.
There's no shortage of money in the system. There's a shortage of implementation capacity to actually get things done.
Always on point with news of the day.
May has promised radical social and economic reforms, fueling speculation over the future of current senior figures.
On the ball every time with all sports codes.
The Joburg side already have a quarter-final at home, and a victory against the Argentines will ensure home semi-final.
Accurate weather updates after every bulletin. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
When cell phones get cut off, people say Mdluli was listening. Who are you?
We have to approach Dennis Breitenbach, who was the prosecutor by then.
The DA Parliamentary?
That's correct. The one who's making halabaloo about me.
There are allegations here that you abused the slush fund. What do you say to that?
We don't have slush fund. I don't know about slush fund.
I respect the fact that you cannot talk a lot about the Secret Service and all that. I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Mdluli, are not abusing the funds of the state? You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and you know, people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the Parliamentary case?
No, I'm surprised because, as I've said, I'm a person of people.
Hearty welcome to you. It's Monday morning. My name is Kendall Makamate. And of course, I've got the sports for you. Now, there was agony for Gabon as the Africa Cup of Nations hosts were condemned to a group stage exit following a goalless draw with Cameroon. Group A wrapped up with Burkina Faso the victors thanks to a 2-0 win against Guinea-Bissau. Cameroon joined the group winners in Saturday's 2 quarter-final matches. Here are the highlights of those matches.
Oh, that's nearly an own goal! Did it cross the line? Well, it's in now. What a defensive blunder. Produce Nakuma.
Now, the South African Football Association says the new Bafana coach will have to abide by their selection criteria for players in the senior national team. This could see the return of some of the overseas-based stars who retired prematurely from the national team under former coach Sheikh Mashaba. Some of the players felt they were treated unfairly by the coach.
SAFA's technical committee met in Johannesburg this weekend to start the process of finding Mashaba's replacement. Although the former coach was dismissed after a disciplinary hearing, his selection criteria raised a lot of question marks. Some of South Africa's soccer stars felt that they were unfairly treated by Mashaba. First to go was former Orlando Pirates striker Kermit Erasmus. He stated that he would love to play for Bafana again, but only if Mashaba goes. Then top performer in the Dutch league, midfielder Kamohelo Mokocho, announced his retirement from the national team. The last to follow suit was striker Dino Ndlovu, who quit the national team late last year.
Our selection criteria still remains the same. It's a South African national team selection criteria that we are using, and so whatever coach we get, we'll obviously have to abide by that so that we are clear that we can enforce and make sure that the best available players are selected. It's been there for a while, and we'll continue to use that criteria. And some other issues, some other terms and arrangements that we need to arrive at with whoever it is that we're employing.
Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
Now, in other news, Sri Lanka secured their first victory on tour against the Proteas with a 3-wicket victory at the Wanderers in Johannesburg. The tourists put on their best performance in the second T20 as they dismissed South Africa for 113, levelling the 3-match series at 1-1 with one more match to go.
South Africa won the toss and decided to bat, dismissing the Proteas for 113. The Sri Lankans put themselves in a good position to get a win on this tour. Following the early wickets of John Smuts and Dennis De Bruin, Haydn Kun and Mangaliso Mosehle put on 28 runs for the third wicket. Their partnership did not continue further following the introduction of Lakshan Sandakan. With his first ball, he removed Mosehle. He followed that up with a further 3 wickets to finish with figures of 4 for 23 in 4 overs. Wickets of Kun, David Miller, Wayne Parnell and Andile Pehlugayo all fell in quick succession. The Proteas were in danger and desperately needed quick runs. At 74 for 7, Captain Farhan Behardine and Aaron Pangiso put on a 33-run partnership to the total. Needing 114 runs, Sri Lanka found themselves 35 for the loss of 3 after 5 overs. The star of the previous game, Lungingiti, started well for the home side. He took 3 wickets in 3 overs, dismissing Nero Shantukwela, Danangjaya, Da Silva and Kusal Mendes. The partnership of Dinesh Chandimal and Captain Angelo Matthews steadied Sri Lanka's innings. Following the removal of Chandimal by Ngidi to make it 4 for 19, the tourists lost 3 more wickets. It gave the Proteas some hope in a tense affair towards the end. Injury struck the Sri Lankans with 8 to win from 7 balls. Matthews suffered a leg injury. He was able to continue and they now needed to hit boundaries to avoid him running. The skipper made 2 sixes in the last over for victory. Lebantube, SABC News.
We didn't assess quickly enough. We thought we did, but the nature of the wicket brought the Sri Lankan spinners into the game. Noticeably, their left-arm Chinaman, who was a star for them today, picked up wickets on a regular basis. And it just stunted our momentum going forward. We lost wickets at crucial moments and we couldn't get any momentum, any partnerships, which is crucial, especially on a low slow. It's difficult for the new batter to come in.
Now, American Serena Williams bucked the trend of top seeds exiting this year's Australian Open tennis tournament by storming into the quarterfinals with a straight sets win over Barbara Strisova of the Czech Republic. In the men's singles, Belgium's David Goffin needed 4 sets to see off 8th seed Dominic Thiem of Austria to book his spot in the last 8.
Second-seeded Williams was elevated to the highest-ranked player left in the tournament after Angelique Kerber was dumped out on Sunday. However, it was by no means a formality as Striskova pushed Williams all the way. Williams is chasing the Open-era singles Grand Slam record. She currently shares that honor with Steffi Graf. Williams is as determined as ever. However, still not at her best, racking up 46 unforced errors and winning only 6 of 14 break points in the 7-5, 6-4 fourth-round victory. She next faces British 9th seed Joanna Konta, who was too good for Russia's Ekaterina Makarova, beating her 6-1 and 6-4 in their fourth-round clash.
And Johanna Konta is through to the quarterfinals in straight sets over Ekaterina Makarova.
In the men's draw, David Goffin recovered from a set down to beat 8th seed Dominic Thiem of Austria 5-7, 7-6, 6-2 and 6-2 to become the first ever Belgian man to reach the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. The 11th seed still faces a tough task in the latter stages, despite the absence of Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic. Simon Burke, SABC News.
Now, you've just heard in Simon Burke's report just now, the Australian Open dished up one of the most striking upsets yesterday as 50th seeded Misha Zverev dumped out Andy Murray out of the Australian Open yesterday. Now, let's have a look at this as well as other highlights from yesterday's matches.
Venus Williams has been to the quarterfinals, or better, on no fewer than 8 occasions at the Australian Open. Her opponent in the fourth round, qualifier Mona Bartel, had never made it beyond the second round. It was the American who started the stronger, racing away to a 3-0 lead. Despite the German settling in the set, it was an advantage Venus would not relinquish as she eased to the first set. The second was a tighter affair, with both players hitting big and holding serve. The decisive break came in the 11th game, with Venus taking a lead she would not relinquish as she won 6-3, 7-5. In an upset to rival Isterman's win over Novak Djokovic, world number 1 Andy Murray was knocked out of Australian Open 2017 by world number 50 Misha Zverev. The German, brother of Alexander Zverev, has been in rich vein of form lately, and it showed on Rod Laver Arena. Going into the match swinging, it was Murray who initially took control. But Zverev broke back in Game 9, beginning a run of 4 straight games in a row to take the first set. Murray appeared to recover in the second, racing away to a 3-0 lead. But Zverev fought back to level the set at 5-5. Murray wasn't finished though and broke at the death to take the second. If the momentum was with Murray, Zverev quickly wrestled it back. Racing away with the third, he quickly took advantage in the fourth. Murray tried to find a way to break back, but the 29-year-old German found a way to resist the world number 1. In a scintillating final game, Zverev wrapped up famous 7-5, 5-7, 6-2, 6-4 victory and booked himself a spot in the Australian Open quarterfinals.
Now, just last week, before that second T20 between, in fact, it was the very first one, that T20 between Sri Lanka and the Proteas out in Centurion, I'd asked your colleague, a meteorologist, exactly what would be happening on Friday. He said, no, it's going to be sunny like it is today. It was very sunny that particular day. And 2 days later, it was raining. In fact, the match was truncated to 10 overs apiece. How does it happen that the meteorologist gets it so wrong?
But you see, it was actually your fault because you should have asked him on the day instead of 2 days before. No, in all seriousness though, we do get it wrong every now and then. That's why we always speak of chances of rainfall. So there's a 30% chance of rainfall.
So it's built in?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a built-in leniency going either way. But what we did have actually from the Wednesday to the Friday was a small low pressure system which actually traveled further south than we were expecting. And that's what brought a little bit of rainfall in. It didn't travel that far south. And so you can't really blame the guy. You asked him a little bit too early. But you know what? That's what you get if you ask us early. We're going to give you our...
You're going to give us whatever comes to your mind. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what else happened. On that same day, it seems like the commentary team phoned the weather report, the Weather Bureau, to find out when the rain was going to stop. And their response that they got was, but it's not raining.
I'd actually like to see who they spoke to because I want to speak to them about that as well. Because Yeah, I don't know about that. They obviously weren't watching the cricket. They were busy doing their jobs.
Oh, nice one. Touche. Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. I want to leave Phil to give us the weather report. All right, a very good morning. It's time for your weather report. We're going to start off with something rather exciting. Let's take a look at what's going to happen this evening and other events forecasts in the AFCON. Of course, so we're going to see Senegal versus Algeria. It's going to be at about 9 p.m. tonight, 25-degree kickoff starting temperature there. So the weather that we're expecting to see, well, it's going to be about a 54% chance of rainfall, which means that we are quite likely to see some light rainfall during the game. It shouldn't be too heavy. But of course, these things change very, very rapidly. Humidity is about 100% there, and we're going to see dew point at about 22 degrees. So again, even if there's no rain, we're very likely to see dew on the field there too. In terms of the other game for tonight, well, it's Zimbabwe versus Tunisia. Same time, 9 p.m., 28 degrees starting kickoff temperature there. And of course, we're going to see the rainfall chance about 20% because we're seeing rather a 4-degree differentiation between dew point and the actual temperature. So it shouldn't rain, at least at the beginning of the match there. And as we progress through the match, might just see some dew on the field, humidity at 94%. But let's take a look in a little bit more detail what's going on through the whole region here. Well, Southern Africa expecting showers and thunder showers. Zimbabwe, they're expecting some stronger showers over its northern region. So if you're going to be around the Lake Victoria area, expect some showers and thunder showers. If you're going to be Victoria Falls, well, it's going to be raining there as well. We're expecting those showers to extend down towards South Africa's central interior and concentrate itself over the Eastern Cape interior, expecting storms and thunderstorms for today. The South African Weather Service even issued a weather watch for thunderstorms around the Eastern Cape interior. Let's take a look for tomorrow, though. We're expecting that rainfall to concentrate itself in the central interior again, growing in size there. Of course, we're going to see a lot more rainfall for that area. Rainfall coming towards Cape Town possibly for tomorrow, light rainfall that is, and rainfall intensifying in southern Angola to about an 80% chance of showers, so widespread rainfall there. Taking a look at your temperatures, well, Durban's at about 35 degrees Celsius, Cape Town at 27, and Kumani at 36. It's going to be a hot day there. Temperatures for today, well, Harare peaking at 26 degrees, rainfall in Bulawayo at 27, and Windhoek peaking at 28 degrees. Again, with rainfall there, so good news for the area. It's going to be a bit of a wet one. Wet conditions coming in towards Lilongwe too, 27 degrees, Dar es Salaam at 32, and temperatures continuing warm all the way up the coastline, even up to Mogadishu. 29 degrees Celsius. This is where we start to see the drier conditions coming in, though. Of course, no rainfall as a result of, well, the conditions really around Eritrea, through Sudan, through Chad, Niger, and all the way through towards that far western coastline. The southern regions expecting some showers, but mostly only light showers, and that's over the southern coastline there of West Africa as well. Rainfall brought in by low pressure systems over the northern coastlines of northern Africa, so expect a bit of a wet one there too. This is where we're going to leave your weather for now, but stay tuned with SABC News.
It was bound to be an interesting debate, yeah, with Donald and Hillary, him not even having bothered to prepare. So he was flying on instinct. And it didn't come across quite well. I'm starting a hashtag, medical fees must fall. There are many students who are protesting who are not necessarily violent. The students are saying the issue is how to implement, whereas the Commission's mandate is to look at feasibility.
Yeah. Among these countries, only South Africa allows same-sex marriages. Very concerning indeed, Prof.
Your sexual orientation does not demean your own humanity, doesn't make you less of a human being. That really is the essence.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
It's 1100 hours Central African time on this Monday, the 23rd of January 2017. Jumbo Africa. And a warm welcome to the final hour. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Makamate.
And this is the Newsroom. Now today we focus on ratings agency Moody's, who has agreed to fork out 11.7 billion rand in penalties for its role in the US 2008 financial crisis. It was actually a global crisis. It's been fined for issuing false credit ratings that eventually led to the resulting market crash. So we're asking that question today, Kendall.
Absolutely.
On the focus, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is our poll. We're asking you, have ratings agencies become a political tool? We've had quite a few responses from you. And the last time I checked, it was close to 80% that was saying, it was 81% in the previous hour. It's now dropped a little bit to 80% saying yes, they become a political tool, and 20% saying no.
108 votes in, 21 hours left. You can still vote on the poll. On our question of the day, we focus here at home on the commencement of the Fees Commission, which will take place today, and they look into the feasibility and the meaning and the context of fee-free education for all. So the question we pose to you then, can the fees inquiry avert a tertiary shutdown here in South Africa? That's the question. We'd like to find out from you on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. We'll read some of your comments in a short while, but right now let's take a look at your news headlines. Gift of the Giver says its contact within Syria has confirmed that photojournalist Shiraz Mohammed is still alive and that his location is known to them. The Fees Commission of Inquiry into the feasibility of free higher education resumes today, with the Statistician General Padi Lahotla expected to be the first witness. And President Jacob Zuma has once again urged ANC members to stop making pronouncements on their preferred candidate to lead the ANC when he steps down. Now those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall what's happening in the final hour on the sports front.
Elvis, quite a lot going on in the final hour. I'll be bringing you stuff from news from the EPL, as well as what happened over the weekend right here and last night in Gabon in the AFCON. But before I get ahead of myself, let me bring it to you as to what's coming up in the sports today.
We didn't assess quickly enough. We thought we did, but you know, the nature of the wicket brought the Sri Lankan spinners into the game.
Sri Lanka edge South Africa on a slow, turning Wanderers wicket to level the T20 series 1-1.
Wayanga! Oh, he struck the upright! What a save! What a dramatic finish here, Fabrice Ondoa, with a couple of magnificent stops.
For the first time in over 20 years, the host nation at AFCON fails to advance to the next round as Gabon crashes out. Once again, Serena Williams puts in the hard work, dispatching Brazilian Czech Barbara Strikova in 1 hour, 45 minutes.
It was a grind. Williams eventually wearing Strikova down in 2 tough sets. 7-5, 6-4 in an hour and 46 minutes on court.
All this and more later on in the sports bulletin at about 11:35 or so. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Our top story this hour, the Gift of the Giver says its contacts within Syria has confirmed that photojournalist Shiraz Mohammed is still alive and that his location is known to them. Now, this despite no proof of life at this point in time. Mohammed, as you can recall, was abducted by a group of armed men near the Turkish border 13 days ago. Gift of the Giver says it has established a task team within Syria to deal with Mohammed's disappearance. It says its hostage negotiator from Yemen is an integral part of the team, but airstrikes have made progress difficult. The humanitarian aid organization says no one understands why Mohammed was taken. It says this could be a case of mistaken identity. Mohammed was on an assignment to capture the humanitarian plight in Syria, and the assignment was facilitated by a gift of the givers. Mohammed arrived in Syria on January the 4th, 2017. The last contact he made was with his former wife, Shirley Govender, on the 10th of January via text message. Now, the statistician General Pali Lahotla is expected to be the first witness when the Fees Commission resumes at the Tshwane Council Chamber in Centurion today. The one-year-old Commission of Inquiry into the feasibility of free higher education was established by the President, Jacob Zuma, last year. The Commission spokesperson says the commencement of the multifaceted public hearings will focus on the meaning, context and fee-free education for all. The Commission, chaired by Judge Jonathan Herher, is expected to wrap up its investigation by the end of May this year. President Jacob Zuma has predicted a big win for the ANC in the 2019 elections. Now, he was speaking in Burgersfort in Limpopo at the provincial celebrations of the party's 105th year anniversary. The president also urged members to stop making pronouncements on their preferred candidate to lead the ANC when he steps down.
Let me remind you that the time for names has not yet come for December. I know that some people say yes, yes. But as soon as they leave here, they say, "Hi, sifunubani, ribatla mangma, simangma." No, not yet the time. ANC members should conclude in-depth discussions about the principles and quality comrades for leadership before discussing the names of specific leaders. Whatever we do, let us think of broader South African society. We must not spend too much focusing on ourselves.
Now, this morning, our focus was on ratings agencies. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa's Secretary General Irvin Jim says it is time that nations in the global south liberate themselves from economic imperialism and begin to truly promote their own economic agendas. The NUMSA boss was reacting to Moody's after the ratings agency agreed to fork out 11.7 billion rand in penalties for their role in the US 2008 financial crisis.
These guys will do anything, and they will not say they were wrong because they would have benefited to this process. They will not turn back on their agenda to champion a neoliberal agenda, which is basically responsible for the chaos that the world is confronted with today.
What would have been the sort of adequate sanction that should have been imposed on them?
I just think that it would be, I mean, we're talking about more than 70 rating agencies. We've got 3 that are popular, Standard & Poor, Fiji, and the 2 that are dominant, they are both from France and US. My honest question is that why should we not liberate ourselves from imperialism? Why there should not be a wake-up call that the people who are voted into power by people in their own different nation state, for instance in South Africa, this should be about fully implementing the Freedom Charter. You should be dumping all their policies that they recommended that have delivered poverty, unemployment, and inequality, where the state must intervene in the economy, create jobs, nationalize our minerals, stop this extraction of minerals that are not beneficiated, use those minerals to build new sectors to create jobs.
So in a sense, then, it would point that there's an agenda from the international ratings agencies towards the developing countries. And therefore, BRICS are suggesting that we should have our own ratings agency. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, we still need to debate as to whether there is a revolutionary agenda in BRICS. I just think that all the people who are coordinating it, they continue to pursue the same right-wing agenda that has failed the people of the South. And therefore, I honestly think that what we need to do is to basically go back to basic. For instance, in our country, we need to implement the Freedom Charter. We need to nationalize strategic commanding heights of the economy. We need to beneficiate. We need to ensure that blacks and Africans basically are affirmed in the economy to address issues of ownership and control.
Meanwhile, the three largest credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, as well as Fitch Group, have recently come under fire following claims that they gave out false ratings to nations under review and are also being used as a political tool. Last week, we asked the chief economist at Investment Solutions, Lesiba Motata, what he thought about the ratings agencies tarnishing their own reputation.
They admit to being dodgy, but now all the BRICS economies have been targeted by these ratings agencies. You told me, oh no, this is not true. Oh, it is true. They are targeting the BRICS economies, and the way that they're talking is they talk our economies down, and they're being used as a political tool. Your comments?
Well, let's think about what has happened. Moody's is now the second rating agency after Standard & Poor's that was found wanting over the 2008 crisis. It is a well-known fact that not only rating agencies, but a lot of banks, which will include Deutsche, that received a $15 billion fine, notwithstanding the list of others, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. All these banks have been levied with penalties as a result of what happened in 2008. What is coming out now with rating agencies, it was already well known. And there has been reform
so
from rating
we know
agencies.
that they're dodgy, but we still trust them implicitly.
We kind of need someone to look at where we are and give a rating for investments. There is talk of a BRICS rating agency.
That was the next one.
There's discussion whether there's merit of it or not, whether it will work at this point or not. The world as we have it now is that rating agencies are found wanting, and we know that fact. And what's going on now is they have to pay, and they're paying. But we need rating agencies. We still need to listen to what they have to say, because there's a huge amount of money invested in bonds, and we need to know what the rating is on such things.
Wow. Now, that is the question that we posed to you on our poll today. Of course, we're asking you, are these ratings agencies being used as a political tool? Last year, we spoke to Professor Parsons around this issue. We'll bring you that clip a little bit later in terms of his thoughts when they were preparing to either downgrade or keep us at the same level. But around 17 parliamentary committees now will be back at work as from tomorrow following the festive season break. The committee on the SABC board inquiry has been putting in extra hours to compile a report before the end of next month.
Deliberations on the SABC inquiry have been underway in earnest. The ad hoc committee is expected to finalize its official position by the 22nd of February. For now, there is still some fine-tuning to be done to the draft report.
We've got 6, if you want to call it, subheadings left to deal with. And they are, well, we've dealt with the shareholder and the board. It's what we're calling here, and we'll change it, the legal status and governance that really deals with the stuff members were talking about, legislative framework, basically.
The Police Portfolio Committee will meet on Wednesday to deal with the Clarkson inquiry report into the fitness to hold office by suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piega. That report is yet to be tabled before Parliament. Another highly anticipated meeting is that of the Committee on Social Development. On Wednesday, they're expected to grill SASSA on the new social assistance payment tender. SASSA will have to explain its readiness to pay grants to 17 million beneficiaries from the 1st of April. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
The actual boxes they tick are firstly the state of our budget, the state of our public finances, how we're financing the budget, the fact that our debt our public debt is too high, and that raises certain questions and certain doubts about our fiscal solidarity. That's being addressed by the budget. We'll come back to that. Secondly, of course, they're worried about our growth prospects. They say, look, all these issues that we are concerned about, a lot of them will be resolved if you can get this economy moving faster than it is at the moment. Then they also look at, of course, labour stability, the state of the labour market. Then finally, a policy certainty, and what has been called by Standard & Poor the political noise that goes around all that. So those are the main boxes that they will tick.
Now, in the event of a downgrade, would it really be such a doomsday scenario, as everybody is saying, or has it happened to other countries where they have actually survived?
Well, we'll know whether Standard & Poor see that the glass is half full or half empty, and they will indicate very clearly where they stand. Of course, there are a number of other countries that have been downgraded or are in the junk status. But I would say that although we're doing better than quite a few of them, it's not a club we want to join.
Several analysts, including yourself, have indicated that there's a 50-50 chance of that particular downgrade of a decision going either way. Doesn't it all eventually come down to policymakers and the country, how we respond to these decisions when decisions are taken in the country?
Well, I think that's important both before the decision of Standard & Poor and afterwards, whatever that decision is. And the important point here is that if you had spoken to a lot of people a few months ago, they'd have said, look, a downgrade is probably on the cards. But we've made efforts. We've been proactive through the National Treasury with business and labour, have gone out of their way to engage with foreign investors, to engage with the credit rating agencies, to say, look, we've got work in progress here. We are trying to turn the situation around. Give us time. So the important point will be whether we are, A, given more time, and secondly, how wisely we use that time. In other words, that we implement what we've said we will do.
Now, conspiracy theorists are suggesting that the ratings agencies are using downgrades as a political tool. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think my response would be based on three arguments. The first is, let's not fall into the syndrome, let's shoot the messenger. I think we've got to be careful of that. Because after all, what the rating agencies are telling us is what the IMF has told us, what the World Bank has told us, what other independent assessments have conveyed to us, and what we know. I mean, we know that these things need to be addressed. So it's a convergence. It's a convergence of views, which it just happens that the rating agencies put a number to it. So I think it's important to understand that. And secondly, I think we must be careful not to fall into a conspiracy theory here, because after all, there are 3 or 4 rating agencies, and they don't see the South African situation exactly the same, which shows that they're not colluding against South Africa. They are looking at the same facts, but understandably, there could be some difference of emphasis. And after all, if we were really going to see this as some kind of conspiracy, then I don't know why the National Treasury and Labour and business, and we're all going out of our way to avert it. Because if it's just a conspiracy, then obviously we should ignore it. We can't ignore it. It's holding up a mirror to South Africa, and it is giving us some idea of what we need to do in order to move ahead.
Now, we just need to put that into context. That was last year, July, when we last spoke to Professor Raymond Parsons of the Northwest University School of Business and Governance about the ratings agencies in preparation of a decision on whether to downgrade South Africa or leave our status unchanged. So 6 months ago, and spot on, that question again, are the ratings agencies being used as a political tool? Let's take a look at what you have to say. That is the poll. And the question that we pose to you, 80% of you are saying yes, they are being used as a political tool. As 20% of you are saying no. There's 109 votes in. You can still vote, and you can also comment on the question that we pose to you. What do you make of all of this? And perhaps the other question is, do we need a BRICS agency? That'll probably bring some equilibrium here. Well, let's move on to stories here at home. Condolences are pouring in for the Registrar of the Council for Medical Schemes, Dr. Humphrey Zakufa. He passed away yesterday morning due to ill health. Dr. Zakufa was part of a working committee established by the Health Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, to deliberate on the details of the future role of medical schemes under the National Health Insurance, NHI. The Department of Health has expressed sadness and says that Sakufa had a wealth of experience and his death is a great loss. The Democratic Alliance spokesperson for Health, Wilma James, says that even though there were differences in opinion, the DA remained confident in Sakufa's commitment to serve the Council for Medical Schemes. Dr. Humphrey Sakufa was 64 years old. Rest in peace, Doctor. Now, a 14-year-old boy from Middelburg in Mpumalanga has been paralyzed after allegedly being assaulted by his school principal. The boy can't walk or do anything for himself. His family is devastated as he is constantly in pain. The Provincial Education Department is aware of the matter.
Siphamandla Choma has not been to school this year. The 14-year-old was allegedly assaulted at school by the principal, accusing him and another boy of stealing 150 rand. Siphamandla twisted his spinal cord and lost a feeling to his legs and is now wheelchair-bound.
He tripped me and I fell, and he put his knee on my chest and asked me, "Where is the money?" I told him I didn't know.
The boy has been in and out of hospital since November when the incident happened.
This is very painful for me. My heart is sore because I don't know how to deal with it, and I'm not coping.
A case has been opened with the police and the department has been served with court papers.
The actual basis for the claim is based on a delictual claim, meaning the child ought to have been protected whilst at school, and the conduct of the principal, we believe it's not in line with what the government policy is, more particularly of the fact that there is no corporal punishment.
The Mpumalanga Education Department says it's conducted its own investigation and awaits the outcome of the probe. What makes matters worse is that during the day, Siphamandla is left alone in this house when his mother is at work. He uses nappies as he can't feel when he has to relieve himself. Siphamandla's dream was to study and become a medical doctor. But now, with his condition, he says he doesn't see that dream becoming a reality. His family says they want justice. Sibongile Mkanimbolweni, SABC News, Middelburg in Mpumalanga.
News from the continent now. Gambia's exiled former president Yahya Jammeh is reported to have plundered the state coffers during his final weeks in power. Aides to the new president, Adama Barrow, says that over 500 million dalasi, which amounts to over 140 million rand, is missing. Meanwhile, West African troops have entered Gambia's capital Banjul to cheers from the city's residents. Now, they will be helping the new president to take office following Jammeh's eventual capitulation after 22 years in power. He flew out of the Gambia early yesterday after refusing to step down despite losing last month's election. Israel has approved building permits for hundreds of housing units in 3 East Jerusalem settlements 2 days after President Donald Trump took office in the United States. The housing projects, which are on land the Palestinians seek as part of a future state, has been taken off the Jerusalem municipality's agenda last month at the last minute. Now, this was done at the request of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in order to avoid further censure from the administration of Barack Obama. But Trump's attitude towards the settlements is expected to be far more supportive than that of his predecessor. In another development that has drawn an outcry from the Palestinians, Trump has pledged to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now, that's your news for now for this moment, but South Africa remains on high alert following the recent outbreak of the highly infectious typhoid in Zimbabwe. The Department of Health and the National Institute for Communicable Diseases issued the alert last week. The typhoid outbreak was allegedly caused by water contamination due to Zimbabwe's long-standing failure in providing safe water and sanitation facilities to the poor. Now, so far, the typhoid fever has claimed 2 lives. South Africa's Beitbridge border posts are already using screening equipment to detect any person suspected of carrying the disease. Now, joining us in studio is Dr. Karen Keddy, National Institute for Communicable Diseases. Do we have that correct, Doctor? No, I don't think so.
Yes, it's Dr. Keddy, thank you.
Yes, there we have it. Now, first and foremost, I want to check with you, how serious is the typhoid outbreak in Zimbabwe?
Typhoid outbreak in Zimbabwe is quite serious. It has been going on for a few years now. You may remember it first hit headline news back in 2012, and it seems to be returning frequently, particularly in the summer months, which is typical of the disease.
Mm-hmm. Why is that, especially in the summer months? Why is that?
It's very much associated with being a waterborne infection, and of course that's our rainy season. So as the rains increase, and particularly if there are challenges with keeping your wells properly treated and chlorinated, a lot of detritus, a lot of human waste basically gets washed into the wells, and the organism then takes hold, and your disease increases as a result.
Will South Africa be affected by this at all?
I think we need to be on high alert, because the problem with infectious diseases is they don't respect borders. I think there's a lot of cross-border traffic between both Zimbabwe and South Africa in both directions. And people going to Zimbabwe could be at risk of picking up in Zimbabwe, and people returning to South Africa from Zimbabwe could bring back the disease with them. One of the challenges with typhoid fever is it's one of those diseases where the patient may actually carry the disease long after they've actually recovered if they haven't been adequately treated. So the chances of them actually infecting contacts, even though they may have had the disease 6 months, a year previously, remains quite high.
When you say contact, what sort of contact are we talking about here?
Normally we think of close contacts. So typically our close contacts would be people within a family. One of the groups of people would be very concerned about would be people working in the food industry who may be preparing food for other people. So anybody who is at risk of eating meals prepared by typhoid fever carriers, or alternatively if they actually are exposed to any water with typhoid fever. But it is a disease that has massive public health importance, and we do need to mount investigations beyond just the patient, but actually looking at their close contacts too.
How do we prevent typhoid spreading from Zimbabwe into South Africa? We know now that the border controls are in place and that they do have the sort of screening gear at the borders where they check these people coming through the borders legally, though. Those that do not enter legally into the country, that would be a problem, it would seem.
Certainly with illegal people coming into the country, it is problematic. But even those that we're checking, the checks can never be 100% for the simple reason that we're just too invasive to the person's privacy. So the best thing we can do, I don't think we can get to a situation where we won't have typhoid introduced into the country. The best thing we can do locally is contain it. Therefore, the advice is if people have been traveling, they do present with a fever, they should really seek medical care as soon as possible. And any medical personnel suspicious that their patients may have typhoid fever, or alternatively diagnosing the disease, needs to report that to the Department of Health as soon as they become known, and then a full investigation will be mounted to basically contain it to a single patient rather than letting it spread within a community.
The border areas where the Beitbridge border is, Messina and Bela, are they fit for purpose? Are they ready to control something like that, like a typhoid outbreak in that area if it should happen?
Realistically, I think South Africa has done a tremendous amount to actually control typhoid fever. I think, like I said, we may have one case, we may even have limited spread, but if you look at the way it was managed last year, when we were actually under a similar threat because of typhoid fever in Zimbabwe, and we did have cases imported in here, I think there was a supreme effort that was actually made to contain it. And while we had an increased number of cases, most of the cases were imported, and very few of those cases actually spread from person to person. The other thing that's important to note with typhoid fever is it really does mandate that patients have to be treated with antibiotics. So patients do need to seek medical care as soon as they become concerned.
How do you prevent a doctor? We have a typhoid symptoms. There's a rundown there of what people should do. Is that about it? Poor appetite, abdominal pain. How you, in fact, this is how you would actually. It would indicate if a person does have symptoms of typhoid: poor appetite, abdominal pain, fever, intestinal bleeding after 2 to 3 weeks, diarrhea or constipation, headaches accompanied with the above symptoms, and lethargy. But how do you prevent all of that?
The way to prevent typhoid fever really is by being very, very particular about the water you're drinking. The water you're drinking must be safe. So the water should either be treated, you can treat your own water, or use good tap water if you know your tap water is safe. I think that is one of the problems in Harare. I think in Johannesburg we should be safe. The other thing also is when people are preparing meals, they really do need to wash their hands before they eat or prepare meals or feed their family. And lastly, of course, is practicing good toilet hygiene. After people have been to the toilet, they must again practice good toilet hygiene, wash their hands so they don't then contaminate the environment for people living in the same household.
So it's all about sanitation and hygiene. It's
all about water, safe water and sanitation, absolutely.
Doctor, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. That was Dr. Karen Keddy from the National Institute of Communicable Diseases joining us here in studio. Now, let's go live to our reporter Eldon Sempier, where the Economic Freedom Fighters leadership is expected to address the media on the outcome of their meeting over the past weekend. As you know, the party's national, provincial and regional structures met in Kempton Park over the weekend to plan for 2017 and for the 2019 general elections. Let's go there live. Eldon, a very good afternoon. In fact, good morning to you. And can you tell us what we can expect from that briefing a little later?
Well, good morning, Elvis. I think 4 major issues, basically. The first one is what we got from the Deputy President of the EFF, Floyd Shivambu, who indicated that this year what the party wants to do is that they want to bring in another layer of leadership. So this will be the 5th structure of the party. You have the national, provincial, regional, as well as a branch level. They want to break it down to a ward level. So each voting district must have its own structure. So that's something that they're bringing in. They're also planning for 2017 the 4 elective conferences of the 4 various provinces that will be taking place: Gauteng and Limpopo, and Gauteng in the northwest rather. And then of course it is the Eastern Cape. Remember that the Eastern Cape as well as KwaZulu-Natal was disbanded. The 2 provinces were disbanded just after the elections because they didn't perform that well. Floyd Shivambu said to us on Friday that the EFF Commander-in-Chief, that is Julius Malema, will be leading a delegation of EFF members who will be focusing on rebuilding the structures in KwaZulu-Natal, and Floyd Shivambu, as well as the chairperson of the EFF, will then be heading to the Eastern Cape to help rebuild the branches there as well. But those 4 provinces will be going into the elective conferences this year, and then the remaining other 5 provinces will be going to the elective conferences only next year. Also quite important, I believe, in this press conference that will come out is, of course, the issue around state capture. Remember that during the state capture hearing, when President Jacob Zuma tried to stop the public protector from releasing the report, the EFF was one of the parties that were involved in trying to get the report released. President Jacob Zuma, after the report has now been released, has said that he will be challenging the report in the High Court. He's already filed those papers, and the EFF is cited as one of the responding parties in that document. So we'll be hearing from the EFF where exactly they stand with regards to that. And quite important, of course, the other thing is the issue around the State of the Nation address, which will be taking place next month. It's quite a huge event, of course, and we know from the various other State of the Nation addresses that had been taking place over the years, where the EFF has been part of the new, or rather part of Parliament, the 5th Parliament, is there has been quite a lot of drama that has unfolded with the EFF there. So this time around we'll be hearing what exactly it is that the EFF has planned for the State of the Nation address.
Eldon, why is the EFF focusing on the upcoming elections in 2019, which is some time away from now?
Well, I guess the other thing is that looking at how they performed in the local government elections, they say they're not happy, for instance, with the two provinces. You have the Eastern Cape and you have KwaZulu-Natal. They're not happy with how the EFF has performed in those two provinces. And that's the reason why they're saying they need to rebuild the structures. Something else that we should remember as well is that the EFF last year came in as what they call the kingmakers of the elections, where they went into not sort of a coalition, but they gave the vote to the DA, where the DA then secured the mayoral seats both in Gauteng, both in Johannesburg and the city of Tshwane. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it in Ekurhuleni because we know that the AIC there supported the ANC to make sure that the ANC has the majority, as well as with the PAC. The EFF's vote also helped the DA in getting Nelson Mandela Bay, which the DA is currently has the mayoral seat, and that's the reason why they feel they need to plan for 2019. First, it will be an assessment of how the party performed in 2016 in those government elections and the decision that it took to give its vote to the DA, whether that has had any political implications for the party, because I remember after that decision, there were some EFF members who were not happy with that decision that was taken. Now, going into 2019, will they be doing the same? What happens in 2019 where you find that the EFF is not in the majority? They, of course, are quite convinced that they're going into the 2019 elections, that they will become the majority party. But if you speak to analysts, they say that's unlikely. But Floyd Shivambu of the EFF, the deputy president of the EFF, had said that if the party does not become the majority, it will be the majority in terms of the opposition. So it will be the leading opposition party in parliament. So we'll have to wait and see how exactly that plans out. And we have to wait and see what strategies they will put in place to make sure that the party performs quite significantly compared to when they first contested the elections back in 2014 and 2016, and now heading into 2019.
What time does the press briefing kick off?
The press briefing is expected to kick off any minute from now. It's expected to start at around midday, and we expect the party president or the commander-in-chief of the EFF to be addressing the media. He'll also be flagged by the other executives of the EFF.
Eldrin, thank you so much for that report. That was our SABC reporter, Eldrin Sampier, at the EFF media briefing. It'll start shortly, as you heard there from him, at 12 o'clock, so you have to stay tuned. We'll probably go live with it right here. Now, we're continuing with typhoid. The risk of contracting typhoid is slim in Mpumalanga, as the Steve Tshwete local municipality is closing the gap between those with and without access to quality sanitation. The municipality was recently honored in Zimbabwe for its outstanding efforts in providing quality sanitation infrastructure. The executive mayor, Mike Messina, collected the award, which was sponsored by the European Union. The municipality was elected out of 273 municipalities to represent South Africa. Last year, this municipality was voted the greenest in the province. Now, to tell us more, joining us in the studio, we are honored to have the mayor himself, Mr. Mike Messina. Your Honor, a very good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis, and thank you very much for having me.
Now, this is an absolute great achievement for your province. What do you make of that, and how does it make you feel as the mayor of the province?
I'm feeling on top of the world.
How, this recognition, what does it mean, though, for Mpumalanga in terms of infrastructure and sanitation?
It means so much, Elvis, as you rightly pointed out, that we're selected out of 273 municipalities by COCTA nationally. What it means is that we must soldier on, to roll out infrastructure with regard to sanitation, because we are also surrounded by rural areas, and we're doing so well. It means that we must actually keep on keeping on. But what I must also stress, Elvis, is that the reason why COCTA chose us is probably because of the bold decision that we took in terms of township establishment in Newtown. I know in your news bulletin you have covered the negative event, matter that has happened at Newtown about that 14-year-old, who's paralyzed because of corporal punishment. That is the very same area is called Newtown, where we want to do away with informal settlement, not only in Newtown, but also in KwaZulu, in Hendrina. So we took that decision, and I think COGTA realized that we are bold enough, hence we were chosen.
Now, there's a number of challenges that all communities face, especially rural communities: service delivery, housing, access to schools, and so forth. But you started to focus on sanitation as a starting point. Why was that decision taken?
When you listen to Honorable Minister of Water and Sanitation, Nomvula Mokonyane, she always says water is life and sanitation is dignity. So we believe that for our people to have dignity, we must actually make it a point that we live by this. We know that other services are of utmost importance, but it is so paramount to start where it matters most, because nothing else make people dignified, than being ascertained that they have access to water, they have access to, sanitation. And we believe that people will be motivated, will be encouraged if really we start where it matters most.
Now, the sanitation projects, tell us about that, and how did you start rolling that out from inception?
Well, looking back, I must say that we're not different from other municipalities. A lot of work was done during the transitional local councils. Remember, before local government formally started, in 2000. We had a very good administration, of course, under the banner of the African National Congress. The then mayors at the time, they did a very good work, the late Mayor Stachoma and the Mayor Ben Mokwena. So when we took over from 2000 going forward, we were able to continue the good work that was started. So the rollout started then, and then we just continued. And as the municipality grew, because we're the fastest growing municipality in South Africa, over 64%, comparatively speaking. So we actually continued the good work that was done. So I wouldn't take the credit that we just started now, but it dates back to the period of TLC.
Now, this is not the only good thing that happened to the municipality. You talked about the 16-year-old record of clean governance and external services due to your approach to service delivery. What is your secret, and what can other municipalities learn from you?
Yeah, my response to this question will be a bit, controversial, but also, I think, understandable. I say three things. And when I say three things, I repeat one and the same thing. One, employ qualified personnel. Two, employ qualified personnel. Three, employ qualified personnel. That is a secret. A few days ago, I presided over shortlisting for municipal manager's position. And as I was doing that, we were looking at the applications, checking whether people who have applied do qualify, do meet requirements. And I can tell you without revealing things that actually out of 45 applicants, we were able to scale them down to about 8, because we didn't take any chances when it came to requirements. Because if people qualify, they have necessary qualifications, and they also meet requirements, then we are assured of the best candidate out of the short-listed ones.
Mayor, I thank you so much once again, and congratulations once again on your achievements.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Well, that was Mayor Masinga coming all the way from Mpumalanga to join us here in studio. Well, congratulations to his municipality. Well, it's time now for your sports news with Kendall Makamate.
Thanks very much, Elvis. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. American Serena Williams bucked the trend of top seeds, exiting this year's Australian Open tennis tournament by storming into the quarterfinals with a straight sets win over Barbara Strykova of the Czech Republic. In the men's singles, Belgium's David Goffin needed 4 sets to see off 8th seed Dominic Thiem of Austria to book his spot in the last 8.
The second-seeded Williams was elevated to the highest-ranked player left in the tournament after Angelique Kerber was dumped out on Sunday. However, it was by no means a formality as Stryskova pushed Williams all the way. Williams is chasing the Open-era singles Grand Slam record. She currently shares that honor with Steffi Graf. Williams is as determined as ever. However, still not at her best, racking up 46 unforced errors and winning only 6 of 14 break points in the 7-5, 6-4 fourth-round victory. She next faces British 9th seed Joanna Konta, who was too good for Russia's Ekaterina Makarova, beating her 6-1 and 6-4 in their fourth-round clash.
And Johanna Konta is through to the quarterfinals in straight sets over Ekaterina Makarova.
In the men's draw, David Goffin recovered from a set down to beat 8th seed Dominic Thiem of Austria 5-7, 7-6, 6-2 and 6-2 to become the first ever Belgian man to reach the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. The 11th seed still faces a tough task in the latter stages, despite the absence of Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic. Simon Burke, SABC News.
Now, over the weekend, Sri Lanka secured their first victory on tour against the Proteas with a 3-wicket victory at the Wanderers in Joburg. The tourists put on their best performance in the second T20 as they dismissed the South Africans for a paltry 113, levelling the 3-match series at 1-0 with one more match to go. South Africa's stand-in T20 captain Ferran Bardine admitted that the team had been slow in adjusting to the new conditions.
We didn't assess quickly enough. We thought we did, but the nature of the wicket brought the Sri Lankan spinners into the game. Noticeably, their left-arm Chinaman, who was a star for them today, picked up wickets on a regular basis. And it just stunted our momentum going forward. We lost wickets at crucial moments and we couldn't get any momentum, any partnerships, which is crucial, especially on a low slow. It's difficult for the new batter to come in.
Gabon made a disappointing exit from the tournament last night following a goalless draw with Cameroon. Burkina Faso beat Guinea-Bissau 2-0 to go through to the quarterfinals of AFCON alongside Cameroon from Group A. Burkina Faso finished top of Group A due to their superior goal difference to Cameroon, who finished second.
After drawing their first 2 matches of the tournament, but they never looked like they would win with no real chances at goal in regulation time. They only came close to a dramatic victory when Dennis Bunga struck at the post in stoppage time. Didier Ndongo then had his follow-up effort brilliantly saved by Cameroon's young goalkeeper Fabrice Ondoa. Gabon are the first hosts to fail to get past the first round since Tunisia in 1994. In another Group A clash, Burkina Faso were gifted the lead after 12 minutes when the hapless Dori Nilsen Silva tried to intercept a ball into the penalty area. But instead, his looping header went past his stranded goalkeeper Jonas Mendes. The rest of the first half produced few real chances, although Guinea-Bissau's Piquetti forced a good save from Hervé Kofi just before the break. Frederick Mendy headed wide from a corner as Guinea-Bissau made a promising start to the second half. But just as they began to look threatening, Burkina Faso struck again. Kofi's long goal kick was headed on by Aristide Banse to Nakulma, who slipped the ball to Bertrand Traore in space on the right. Traore did the rest as he ran on to fire past Mendes. Pesinka to SABC News.
And in closing, a little bit of English football, where goals from Diego Costa and Gary Cahill gave Chelsea a 2-0 victory at Stamford Bridge, sending the Blues 8 points clear at the top, and Wayne Rooney scored his 250th goal for Manchester United, breaking the legendary Sir Bobby Charlton's all-time record.
Moses driving again at Robertson. Costa! Took a while, but they've broken the house down. Costa, the Premier League's top scorer. Was he away for a week? He's back now. Deftly in by Fabregas and in by Cahill, and the points should be safe, and Chelsea will pull clear again. Ozil, Mustafi, the breakthrough at last. Tarkowski, Barnes goes down, penalty. This could be a significant blow to Arsenal's title hopes, and a big fillip for Burnley. Gray scores. Here's their magician, Sanchez. Koscielny, now me with the challenge, and a penalty again. This for victory. Sanchez scores and wins the game for Arsenal.
Darting in behind, this is dangerous. Good running from Peters. Deflected in. They are going to save it. It has to be now. And it goes from Rooney! He always had to do it in style. 250 goals for Manchester United. 12 years and 115 days after a hat-trick on debut. He passes Sir Bobby Charlton. He snatches a point. He takes the headlines once again.
And that's the way we leave it with Newsroom and the sports. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Thanks very much for having joined us. You have been watching Newsroom. I am Kendall Makhamate. Until then, listen.
SABC News, on point with news around the world. Live transmissions to keep you informed. When history unfolds, we are there.
At which Clinton and her supporters painted an optimistic portrait of America. Statues of the woman who led the march to the Union buildings in Pretoria in 1956 have been unveiled against the walls of the State Theatre in Pretoria. Sophie de Bruyn, Lillian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph and Rahima Musa led 20,000 other women to the Union buildings against the Dom Passers in 1956.
It is for the youth to take